Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
The Return of Joyboy by TheIntrovertRin. A story in which Luffy is the child of sea. The secrets of Luffy are unveiled slowly, which gives heart attack to people. Member list. Garrick Russell, Warlord. Black Money Young Lion, Warlord. KSG PL4YZ, Warlord. King Nemo, Warlord. Zach Travis, Warlord. Adios.
Dragon was staring at the ocean with his stoic face. His mind wandered to the events which occurred recently. The cruelty the world government was showing felt never-ending. He wants to stop the world government. He wants to liberate the people. He had talked to his father, Monkey D. Garp, countless times. He had screamed at him so that the old man knew what was happening, even if he knew some. But the only thing he got in reply was, "It's my duty that I'll choose and the justice of my will that I will follow." He knew that Garp was not responsible for the events that occurred in Ohara, Flevens, Batterola, and many such places. But he couldn't forgive those who knew the truth but chose to be silent, chose to turn a blind eye towards it. He hated people like that. But he always felt that his father knew something which he didn't. It always unsettled him. The last time he had met Roger, he had offered him protection. He had known about his incurable disease. He knew about the man's quench for adventure. He knew his love for the sea. But the man said something which left him thinking about how much he knew. "I'm not the one who will change the world. Someone will come soon, who will shake the world to its core and unravel the truth for the world to see." Roger had laughed it off when Dragon had asked about the Void Century, saying that the Chosen One will have all the answers to his questions. Dragon refused to ask any questions further, but regretted when he heard what happened in Batterola. He would have loved to save the unborn child from the wrath of the Navy. But all he could do was regret and feel sad when the news of women and infants getting slaughtered reached him. He looked over to the vast stretch of the ocean in front of him. The wind howled, the full moon purely white, the sea which had been calm a few moments ago, but now felt like it was dancing as if celebrating about something. He doesn't know what he felt that moment, but he declared the heavy thoughts of his heart and the burdens which he felt on his shoulder for the howling winds to listen. He shouted his fury over the world government, with each word the wind and the waves rampaging as if agreeing to his every word. He made his vow to end the tyranny of the world government for the Mother Nature to hear. But the next he knew was the wave engulfing him and his right hand bleeding, the drops of blood falling into the ocean and some on the railing and the deck near his leg. Before he could take a look at his wound, he heard the sounds of drum and the waves coming back to him again to engulf him. On instinct, Dragon stepped back as the waves licked the blood from the railing and deck, leaving a baby, which was sleeping with a smile on his face. The sounds of drums was getting louder with the soft melody that the winds now played, the calm waves which danced in the ocean, and in the middle of this, he saw the baby opening his eyes slowly and staring at him. Dragon's breath was caught in his throat as he saw the baby stare directly into his eyes. It felt as if he knew, as if it was seeing his soul. It was a joke. It was a joke to think that the world's most wanted criminal was scared of a little baby, which looked too adorable. Dragon gulped when he saw the baby suddenly smile. His smile reaching his eyes, which was almost impossible. He would have called it creepy, but the adorable squishy face had nothing such. Dragon didn't know when he moved, when he held the baby in his arms and when he started smiling. The smile on the baby's face was damn too infectious. It was as if he was enchanted by the baby itself. He already felt that he wants to take care of the baby, take him under his own wing and protect him from the terrible and cruel world. Dragon felt a shiver run through him when the cool wind blew through him and the baby, ruffling the baby's hair in the process as if it was especially kissing and giving its blessings to the infant. Dragon looked at the sea. Calm, too calm for Grand Line. The sounds of the drums ceased when the baby fell asleep in his arms. The small being was not afraid of the stoic face that Dragon had wore earlier. He hadn't cried like most of the kids did. Dragon made his way inside his cabin and laid the baby on the bed and went to pick up some towels to dry him. But to his astonishment, the baby was completely dry. It was as if he was never in the ocean in the first place. Dragon's shocks were increasing every minute as he watched the mysterious baby. Why was the baby in the ocean in the first place? Should he keep it? Is it his son now? Whatever might be the answer, he wasn't ready to face it. His thoughts were broken by his right-hand man, who chose this time to enter his cabin. The violet-haired Okama Queen stopped in his tracks when he saw the most wanted criminal, his best friend, his boss, the coldest person he has ever seen, cradling a baby. "Dragon boy?" the Okama Queen questioned, not knowing what to even ask. Dragon didn't know what he should do, but he felt attached to the baby and in a sense, he felt he was a father to the little infant. He felt proud. He felt happy to have a son. He wanted to protect the baby, now his son. He picked the baby in his arms and kissed his forehead, lovingly, making the baby open his sleepy eyes in the process. The baby giggled, making Dragon's cold heart suddenly fill with warmth. He smiled as the next words slipped from his mouth. Monkey D. Luffy. The baby giggled in joy and laughed a little, the sounds resonating through his body as Dragon heard it. The wind seemed to play a tune and the moonlight illuminated the room, falling on Luffy's face. The baby was smiling widely and slowly tried to reach for his hands, grabbing the large finger and snuggling closer to Dragon as he closed his eyes again and slept. The smile never left the little face. How is that even possible? How can an infant smile in his sleep? Do every baby do this? How did the baby get to him? There were more questions than answers. But one thing was sure, the ocean, the sea, the waves have gifted him a child to take care of. He is my son. Dragon looked to Ivankov for the first time since the said Okama had entered the room, with a smile on his face, which was too rare for anyone to see. Ivankov stood there shocked for a while, not believing the words that this man could ever have a baby. But the proof was in front of him. He made his way to the infant and saw the smiling face. His heart stopped for a moment. He was so freaking adorable. Ivankov couldn't help himself from cooing at the newborn. Can I hold him? Ivankov asked, his hands ready to carry the little one in his arms. Dragon smiled at his right-hand man and handed his son to him carefully. Ivankov touched the soft cheeks of the baby using his giant thumb, causing the baby to open his eyes slowly. The little one gave a small yawn before blinking at Ivankov. The baby cutely tilted his head a little to the side, making Ivankov stop, and stared into the eyes of the revolutionary for a few seconds before bursting into a cute happy giggle. Ivankov felt his heart had stopped working when he felt the intense gaze of the baby. Something inside him told him, this baby was not ordinary. What was that? Ivankov uttered, not even realizing that he spoke. I don't know, Dragon simply shrugged it off, knowing full well what his friend wanted to ask, but he himself doesn't know what was that. He had felt it once. Dragon didn't know how having a son was going to change his life, but he loved the boy. His cute giggles and smiles had already made their way to his heart. He didn't have the heart to send the boy to a safe place. Didn't want to allow him to go even a few inches away from him. He wanted to shield the boy from everything. Even if the thought about the safety for his new son concerned him, he can't do that. He can't give him to his father, not right now. But the revolution was not an idle place for a child to grow. He wants his child to have a proper upbringing and choose what he wants to do in the future, without any privy his child whatever he wants. The infant didn't know that he had already wrapped the leader of the revolutionary army in his fingers, in just a few moments. It has been a year since Dragon had left the revolutionary base and hid in West Blue, with Ivankov by his side. But he was still carrying on with his revolutionary work, ordering his fellow comrades through Denden Mushi, leading the revolution quietly, and keeping it still going. He knew that he couldn't be the center of the revolution while caring for his baby boy. He wants to protect Luffy from the world government. He wants him to never dirty his hands as he had done with his own. He wants him to always smile as he does. The smile which is equivalent to the son Luffy is his son, his treasure. He gave him all his love and attention. He gave everything Luffy wanted, spoiling the little brat to the fullest. He never told anyone about the existence of Luffy, except Ivankov, who was there with him in those moments when he first got his baby. Ivanov is the man whom he can trust with his life. Right now, they were sitting idly by a beach on an island in the West Blue, seeing the sunset. The little toddler was doing his best to get out of the grasp of Dragon, who was holding him. Even for a year-old child, Luffy was an energetic brat, always wanting to explore everything with his curious eyes. Right now, he was pouting when he felt he can't crawl or run on the rough sand and play with it. The adorable puppy eyes, which he was making, could have broken Dragon's resolve within a second, which had broken Ivankov's already. Dragon boy, let him play. We're here, he won't get away. Dragon sighed as he looked at the adorable face which was grinning widely at Ivankov, as if agreeing with the Okama and letting a cute giggle. Alright, Dragon smiled as he finally placed the toddler on the sand. He could see the boy running towards the water with his wobbly legs. Without thinking, he stood up, following the baby, ready to pick him up if Luffy got too close to the shoreline. Luffy looked so happy as he ran his way to the shore, giggling repeatedly as if someone was calling him or telling him a funny tale. That was when Dragon saw the water leaving the shoreline and rapidly rushing toward the giggling and babbling baby. Dragon without hesitation picked up the boy, who began whining at it. He saw the water rising upwards and splashing itself on them, which was technically impossible. He took his steps back, afraid that the brat will get sick, afraid that he will feel difficulty in breathing. But he was left amazed when he saw that Luffy was not wet at all. He was not breathless. He was smiling and giggling, not whining like before. His sunshine smile, which could light up his worst days, was on full force on his little face as he looked at the waters. He was left awestruck. It was the second time this has ever happened. Dragon couldn't place or form a single sentence about what had just happened. Ivankov came running towards Dragon, checking the baby instantly for any signs of damage. But he also was left stunned when he felt the baby dry and giggling and babbling happily. What was that? Ivankov managed to utter, ahead of his shock, looking at the waters, which seemed to be dancing as if it got the most precious thing it can ever get. Dragon shrugged, not knowing what to say at all. He was happy Luffy was fine, that he was safe. But that didn't answer what the heck had happened. He saw the boy smiling wider than before, as if he found a part of himself. Pa. Dragon literally dropped the baby at hearing the first words of Luffy, while Ivankov literally stumbled on his feet, their hearts racing at thousands of kilometers per hour. The little boy's face scrunched a little, as if he was thinking something, and then with a full force smile, another word was uttered by their sunshine. Pa. Pa. Papa. Papa. Luffy smiled and kept on enchanting the words as he looked at his father. Dragon found a smile creeping on his face. He pressed his lips on Luffy's crown, a soft loving kiss. He didn't notice the water imprints on the baby's forehead. He was too engrossed in the chanting. He felt as if he was in the night cloud. Papa. Papa. Luffy kept on babbling cutely. Dragon and Eva found their hearts melting at that. All the worries of the world, forgotten. All they could hear were the cute voice and the cute giggling and the brilliant smile, which challenged the sun, on the face of the adorable boy. The time to return to revolution was returning. They can't abandon their duties, even though they were working from a far distance. The revolutionaries needed their leader and right-hand man. The Marines were getting feisty and were trying to find what and where Dragon was, which to no doubt they were failing miserably. Dragon was even informed by Kuma that Cypher Pole agents were searching desperately for him. Luffy had already started walking, or more like running. He was a brat full of energy. Dragon and Ivankov even sometimes can't keep up with the boy. They have to wonder from where he gets that much energy. But they did have a rough idea. Even though the toddler was only a year old, he ate as much as a grown-up man. Luffy loves jumping, running, and playing around. He loves looking at new things with curiosity and awe-filled eyes. But above it all, he loves visiting the ocean and running through the shorelines, making Dragon and Ivankov keep an eye on the boy. The boy was a trouble magnet. If he was left unattended for even 10 seconds, they would find him in trouble, always. Once when Dragon was too busy with his work and Ivankov was sleeping, Luffy had crawled upstairs, giggling and babbling, where he found a snail and blabbered nonsense in it. Later they found that he had called some higher-ups, whose number he was able to manage to dial, and they considered that Luffy, the one who only could speak 2-3 words like Papa, Eva, and food, blabbered absolute shit to them, which was considered as high-tech information, with highly coded language, used by the revolutionaries. Dragon and Eva had laughed their asses off that day when they realized that the call had apparently connected to a Cypher Pole agent. Though they did change their location after that, not taking their chances of their location being identified, they did learn their lesson to never leave the kid alone after that. And hence, another beautiful and memorable year passed. Luffy was running with his 2 small feet on the shoreline today. Dragon and Ivankov were there watching him carefully when they saw Luffy jump into the ocean. They both panicked. Being a fruit user, denied both of them any movement in the ocean. Luffy! Dragon yelled at the top of his voice and ran towards the shore. Luffy resurfaced from the ocean, but he was sitting on top of a sea king, giggling happily and laughing hard. Dragon quickly picked the boy from the sea king, who bowed down, allowing Dragon to get a hold of the boy. His heart beating like crazy, he had felt that he lost his boy. The sea king seemed to smile at Luffy, which made Dragon feel amazed and a little confused. Luffy waved his hand back at the sea king. Bye, bye, the little kid said, followed by a giggle and gummy smile. He could feel Ivankov startled. They have never seen anyone, much less a kid, getting a ride on a sea king. Lu? Dragon tried to gain the attention of the kid. Don't jump in the ocean. Dragon hugged the boy tightly, afraid that he will again jump in. When they separated, Luffy tilted his head sideways in confusion. Why? It's dangerous, Dragon said, trying to contain his worry. Mom, not dangerous, Luffy said with puffed cheeks. It took Dragon and Ivankov to register what the kid had said. Ivankov gulped, thinking what the heck the boy meant. Dragon's breath felt stuck in his throat. He took a deep breath. Lu, who is your mom? Dragon asked. He felt stupid for asking that question, but he knew that he had never told the kid anything about mom, because he himself wasn't sure. Ivankov looked at Dragon as if he had grown 2 heads. Luffy again tilted his head sideways, cutely, before pointing to the ocean. Mom. Dragon felt his breath knocked out from him as he felt his unspoken suspicion come true. Luffy was the child of the ocean, the sea, and now that he thinks about it clearly, many things make sense. Right. Dragon felt himself say as he let the boy down and saw him running around again. Dragon boy, you are hiding something, Ivankov asked. He really didn't like the idea to ask, but he was attached to Luffy, and he was curious to know what that all was about. Dragon nodded and then shook his head, his eyes never leaving Luffy. He himself felt confused, shocked at the turn of events, but he didn't speak a word. The next day, they were disguised as normal citizens walking around the town. His red tattoo, hidden with makeup, courtesy of Ivankov himself. He wore a black t-shirt and blue jeans, with a cap covering his face well, and black shoes. Luffy wore a red hoodie, blue shorts, and a sandal. The boy apparently didn't like shoes. He always kicked them off saying, "Yucky." Dragon's hands were holding Luffy's tiny little hands securely, as the boy didn't want to be carried. He wanted to run and climb on the stalls which were lined up. Dragon couldn't help but smile seeing the toddler climb onto him. That was when a powerful Haki flared at a distance. Dragon wasted no time in carrying Luffy and making his way to an alley, as swiftly as possible, without raising any suspicion. He heard a marine saying to another marine that Dragon was spotted on this island and was probably there. He could easily defeat them, but his gaze went to Luffy, who was painfully quiet. He had never thought the boy can be quiet. Even in his sleep, he had heard his boy smiling, giggling, and babbling some words. They needed to get out of here, now. He reached for his Den Mushi and dialed Ivankov and informed him about the situation. Ivankov agreed to meet him in the alley, with all the necessary dough stashed in the house they were living in. It was after 10 whole minutes. He felt Ivankov's Haki. He felt him approaching him. Ivankov handed Dragon his green coat and a blanket to hide Luffy in. Dragon wrapped the boy carefully in the blanket. "Papa." He saw the cheerful boy on the verge of crying. It broke his heart. "It's okay. It will be fine, Lou." He tried to assure the kid as he carried him in his arms. The blanket worked perfectly to hide the boy from the eyes of the world. They soon found themselves with CP0 agents on their tail. The second dragon felt killing intent and aimed his way with his Haki. He held Luffy tightly while Ivankov shielded Dragon and Luffy. Dragon had by now easily disguised Luffy as if he was carrying something other than a small kid. But it caused more trouble. The bastards probably felt that catching them was impossible, so they aimed for the thing Dragon was holding, probably thinking of it as some important documents or pertinent revolutionary army files or valuable items. Dragon's instincts told him to run. The bastards were aiming for his son, his precious son, who was crying into his chest, scared at the sounds of the gun, scared of what was happening, unable to know or comprehend. For the first time in his life, Dragon, instead of facing his enemies and his adversaries, decided to run. To protect his son. Because his son mattered more than anything in the world. And so he did, with Ivankov. He did, making the agents miss their mark. It took a day to lose the world government agents and it was a bitter retreat. But Dragon won by not giving up Luffy's existence. That was a close call. He wasn't able to protect his son completely. His son was not safe with him. He learned that by the bitter truth. It was a very close call. He can't keep him to himself if he wants Luffy to be safe. He was in the middle of a revolution. He can't raise a child. He can't completely assure that he could keep Luffy safe or this won't happen again. If the world came to know his existence, he would be hunted, even if he was a kid. That was the reason why he had never married or fallen in love. That was the reason he never dreamed of a child in the first place. The only reason, the world government could use them against him. The terrifying thought was enough to keep him away from his family. Heck, no one even knew his last name. Everyone knew him by Dragon, the revolutionary, not by Monkey D. Dragon. But Luffy, his son, his treasure, had made a place in his living a day without him. But he had to decide. He had to decide what he wants for Luffy. Either keep him and have more close encounters like this or let him grow peacefully without violence. He tried to search for the best course of action he could and the only answer was Garp. But he would know in an instant. He always seems to know much more than he let others think. But that was the only safe option for Luffy. He grabbed the nearby Den Mushi and dialed a number that he never thought he would call, waiting for a soft click. Vice Admiral Garp here. He could hear the crunching noise coming from the snail. He smiled as he saw Luffy's head perk up at the sound from his chest to the snail. He felt his mind squeal, so cute. "It's me," Dragon replied. Garp was a bit stunned to see his son smile. He had not seen him smile ever since the day when he had found out about the horrible crimes of the world government. It was a huge shock for him, but he steadied himself as he frowned. "Why did you call me?" Garp asked, trying to sound annoyed, as he masked away the feeling of happiness he felt by seeing the snail smile. What he would not do to see Dragon smile again. Though they were on opposite sides, he was still his child, his blood. "I want to ask you a favor," Dragon said, his eyes never leaving the baby. "I want you to raise my child." Dragon's voice came out forced. He didn't want to give Luffy. He felt a sob choke his throat. "What?" Garp felt a mixture of emotions flowing through him. It hit hard. The first emotion he felt was a shock. Then it changed to happiness and it lastly changed to panic. "Where are you?" Garp asked. He knew if the kid was revealed to the world then he will be hunted without mercy. He would be used against Dragon. It would be Bartala again. He can't let that happen again. Not when he knew it beforehand this time. He understood the smile Dragon gave him now. He was happy. "I will send you the coordinates." That was all Dragon said before disconnecting. The last days with Luffy were bittersweet. He knew their time together was over, something he had never even thought about. He saw Ivankov getting sad at the idea. He knew he even was attached to the boy. Somehow, he felt that Luffy knew that he was about to be separated. Dragon was sad that he wouldn't be there to see his son growing. He felt a lump grow every time he thought about it. But he focused the last days with Luffy, playing as much as he can, giving him his endless love. Giving the kid his favorite candies, being ready to struggle and care for a hyperactive boy. Dragon and Ivankov did their best to not feel sad in front of the kid, but the kid seemed to know their sadness. He seemed to understand their pain. Whenever he was carried by them, he would snuggle a bit closer, if it was possible, and hug them with his small limbs. Dragon can't imagine how horrible the upcoming days would be. He can't imagine the horror he will face to know that he can't see those gummy smiles, can't hear the soft giggles and the laughter. He would feel his world crumble, he felt, but he knows better than to not crumble in despair. Dragon and Ivankov watched as a small dinghy pulled off at the side of the island. The dinghy was rocking violently in the storm. The storm had pulled off in the little island since they had arrived. Dragon watched his father jump into the ocean and reach the shore to him. Dragon nodded at his father in a sign of greeting. Garp pouted at the sight of the bare greeting that his son gave him. He followed Dragon, wriggling his shirt off to remove the wetness, to the little house secluded in the forest area. His son has chosen a good place for hiding, he thought as he examined the sanctuary. After he had heard that Dragon had fled, literally fled, for the first time from his enemies, he was scared to find out if something was wrong. But luckily, Dragon called soon and gave him the news of his grandson. He could connect the dots and now understand why Dragon was missing and why he had fled that day. Dragon fled to secure his child, to not give up his identity to the world. He felt proud of Dragon for achieving his goal. The house was a small one, but it gave a feeling of home to Garp. He could see the toys which were splattered everywhere in the hall. He snickered when Ivankov tripped on one of them. He and Dragon entered the room where his grandkid was. He could smell the scent of the sea radiating from it. When his eyes landed on the kid, the first thing his heart and mind screamed was the kid was too adorable. He plopped on the large bed, legs crossed, and back against the wall. He saw Dragon pull up a chair and sit opposite to him. Garp held the boy up from the bed and slowly and tenderly placed him on his lap, not wanting him to wake up from his sweet dreams. The kid was smiling. He was mumbling something and drooling from his mouth. Garp's face lit with joy at the sight of his grandson. His thumb gently caressed the cheeks of the toddler, making the little one scrunch his eyes and open them with a small yawn. The kid was blinking at him, with his head tilted, taking in the unknown face for the first time. The bright brown eyes met Garp's eyes as Garp's fingers ran through the kid's smooth hair. Garp felt his fingers stop altogether when he saw the intense gaze which landed on him. He felt as if a sword was placed on his chest, ready to pierce his heart and just waiting for one wrong move to finish his very existence. The sound of waves crashing on the shore was clearly heard in the silent room. The rain was getting heavier, and the violent rustles of the trees and the waves crashing on the shore filled the room. Lightning crackled outside, the poor afraid animals screeched, and the inhabited island roared as if it was given its own voice. And in the middle of all of this, they were, in the middle of the room, waiting for something. And then the baby smiled. He had never seen anyone give so big of a smile in his entire life. He failed to notice when the feeling, the pressure, and the force was altogether gone. He failed to notice when the turmoil of the wild beasts ended, when the roar which he heard altogether vanished. He just saw how the little guy squirmed in his lap, to find a better spot to lay down and sleep, to droll again as if nothing had happened. His name is Monkey D. Luffy, Dragon said as his black eyes fixed on Luffy. Garp was broken from his thoughts, as he slowly nodded. This child is not normal, Garp said as he raised his head to see Dragon in the eyes. Where are you hiding? It came more as a statement than a question. Dragon refused to meet his father's eyes. His eyes were set on Luffy as if telling that Luffy was his child and he knows that he is not normal, like the others, but he would not tolerate anyone mockingly spouting nonsense at his son. Even though his father said it with good intentions, Dragon couldn't help but feel a tinge of anger. Anger that his kid will be treated differently from the rest of the people. Anger that he might lose his charming smile. He felt himself question his own solution to his problem. Will Luffy be okay with his father? Will he be happy? Can Garp assure Luffy's well-being and that his smile will remain protected? He hesitated. He hesitated in giving up Luffy. He didn't want his son to be far from him, but he knew he had to steal his heart. His heart refused to do so, though, but he has to. The silence in the room was awkward. The tension increased in the room as Garp looked at Dragon and then the toddler, sleeping on his lap. The kid was like the sea, which can be calm and gentle before it stormed and took out countless people from their miserable life. I don't understand myself, Dragon uttered the word, his nails digging deep within his palm, drawing blood from it. He gritted his teeth harshly. He couldn't let his heart make a decision over his better judgment. Explain from the beginning, Garp said, his eyes on the blood trail which stained the green cloak of his son. Dragon tried taking deep breaths. Still today, he doesn't believe what happened that day, May 5th, and he still feels uneasy about accepting the truth. But the very proof lay on the lap of his father. It was on May 5th, when I was out on the deck, thinking about the cruelty of the government. The wind was howling, the waves were crashing, and the full moon was lit up. I don't know what I thought, What encouraged me, I just yelled out the weights on my heart. Dragon placed his hand on his heart, which felt heavy for the first time after meeting Luffy, and shoulders. I was swearing to bring justice to innocent people and dethrone the world government. That was when a wave engulfed me. Dragon's eyes trailed at the right arm. The wave gave me a wound. The next second, another wave came, licking the blood off the deck, and when the wave resided, I heard drums. I heard a melody. The sea went calm and a baby with a wide smile, impossible for him, laid on the deck. Dragon saw his father freeze before slowly looking at Luffy, who was soundly asleep. The silence in the room was enough to hear the throbbing heartbeat of Garp and Dragon, both of them with some amount of realization. Dragon swallowed hard, moving his gaze to his father, and saw the pale face regaining color. He had never seen his father pale. He had always seen a laughing man. He did scowled and become annoyed, but never paled. Garp raised a hand to his face, rubbed his temple, and leaned on the wall behind him as he let out an empty chuckle. There is an old legend which had circulated in the world about offering blood to the sea, and in return they would get their desired thing. Countless people have offered even their limbs in the sea to gain something. But none have succeeded for countless centuries. It's been a long time since the sea had taken up any offer. Or more like forced you to take an offer. Dragon's mind filled itself with countless questions, whose answers were completely out of his reach. He is a child of the sea and AD by your blood. He carries the will of D as well as the will of nature itself. Garp's eyes met that of Dragon's shocked ones. He will be a force to be reckoned with in the future and change the world. It will be his destiny, connecting and fulfilling your dream indirectly. There was silence in the room as they both watched the kid, his chest raising up and down. Dragon felt worried. He felt nervous, but above all he wanted his son to be safe. To live his life the way he wants. To choose his own destiny and create his own fate. He didn't want his only son to be forced into anything which he doesn't want. Garp chuckled, feeling the inner turmoil of his son. Don't worry, he will get to choose what he wants to do in his life. I love him. But the past days have made me realize that if his existence is revealed, then he will be hunted, despite his age. I don't want him to live a life where he is hunted and haunted. I'm afraid that something will happen to him if he stays with me, Dragon said with a sad tone. Blood dripped violently from his palms, as he forced himself to say, if he wouldn't say it now, then he couldn't ever. But he won't be giving up on his son. He loves H. I will never fade away. He will even throw his own life to protect him, but he knows that he is not too strong to protect Luffy from the whole world. He is not strong enough to see Luffy cry again. The kid had never cried before, never ever. So, when he saw his crying face that day, it hit him hard. Garp let out a small chuckle, mesmerized by his son's thoughts. I don't want to see tears on his smiling face. If Garp noticed the glossy eyes of his son and tears that dropped from his eyes to land on his lap, he didn't mention it. The storm listens to her voice, loud and commanding. The tree rustles to her breeze, warm and caring. She calls for whirlpools and they listen. She pushes the ground and it obeys. Without a question, without hesitation, and without any thoughts. But above all she is lonely. There might be countless sailors, merchants, navy officers, marines, pirates, etc. sailing on her mercy, but she is alone. It was once said the sea had a child which she lost. Lost to the world of mortals. Lost to the world of some ungrateful people, which were none other than the ancestors of the celestial dragons. Do you think she will let that happen all again? But why me? Dragon asked. His voice is uncertain for the second time. Garp shrugged at that. He could only guess the answers. But none seemed too accurate to console his son. None seemed fit to tell him that he was worthy. But maybe there's a way. The sea wants to be free, she wants to take her revenge. And you are exactly doing what she wants. Garp said. Their talking had woken up little Luffy, who was amazed by the color of Garp's shirt. His doe-black eyes lit and his smile stretched as wide as it could be. Isn't she the most powerful being in the world? Isn't she capable of destroying the whole world? Dragon asked, his eyes never leaving Luffy, who had jumped off from Garp and was now running around in the room and giggling happily. That she is. But there is a prophecy, which I heard from Roger. After 800 years, a man will return to reclaim his throne. Garp said, his eyes straight on Luffy. Luffy turned back to face the two men in the room and offered them his brightest smile. Garp felt as if he was asked to continue. He really didn't want to. But as he was about to say the next words, the lightning cackled louder, the winds blew fiercely, and the waves went violent as if it was trying to reach the shore. But above all of this, Luffy's cackles, laughter, and giggles were heard clearly. The light of the moon, which was not there for how many hours, entered the room, and falling on the little bundle of joy, the sounds of drums were back, and Luffy's grin stretched impossibly wider. Joyboy will return. After their conversations, Luffy was about to be handed to Garp. Luffy was crying. He didn't want to leave Dragon and Eva. He was crying, Papa, and Eva. Dragon felt himself and Ivankov cry at the sight. But Dragon steeled himself. It was for Luffy. To protect Luffy. The screaming of the boy was heard above the lightning of the storm. which had summoned itself again. Luffy's desperate cry would always haunt his mornings. He would always feel empty without his son, but his son needed protection right now, which he couldn't provide. He couldn't risk Luffy getting caught in the hands of the world government. He couldn't give up his identity. Will I say E? Papa and Eva Aga. In? Luffy asks through his sobbing. Dragon feels his heart break into million pieces. He thinks about what he had done to get such an adorable kid. Yes, we will. I promise I'd make sure of it, Dragon said as he cradled the kid tenderly. He slid a silver-colored chain, which had a red prism hanging from it, into Luffy's neck. He opened it to show Luffy his, Eva's, and Luffy's picture. A last souvenir for him to remember his days with them. Luffy looked at the picture and started crying again. Keep it to yourself, Dragon said. Do not show it to anyone, okay? Dragon said, and he could Luffy stiffen that upper lip of his and nod his head. He knew he was risking a lot, but his son deserved to remember his dad and Eva. He deserved to have the pleasure of seeing the picture when he missed him. He made careful arrangements for that, and no one would suspect that a picture can be within that if they didn't know what they were looking for in the first place. Ivankov gave Luffy one last hug before Dragon nodded hesitantly and took heavy steps toward his dad. He gave the wailing boy to his dad. He placed stones on his heart. He kissed the boy on his forehead. Luffy sniffled, trying to stop himself from crying that moment. But when he detached his lips, the wailing started soon enough. He couldn't risk his son. He heard the desperate wailings, cries and screams for him. He felt helpless. He ran his way to his cabin, locking himself, crying out his eyes from the detachment of his dear son, steeling himself for the upcoming days without his little sunshine. It was making his heart crack, but he promised that he would make a world where no one had to feel this again. He would protect Luffy in his own way. He would protect him always. And they will meet once again. But he will keep his promise. He will visit Luffy. He can't just go and abandon his kid forever. He can't just go and leave his sunshine alone. He will visit him when there will be time. But first, he had to put down the government bastards which were growing feathers. He and Ivankov returned to the army after a week. If anyone noticed how stressed they were, or how sad they were, they didn't question them. Dragon jumped into his job with fervor, with a wanting to destroy the institution that made him give up his son for a better life. He would do his best and overthrow the world government one day. He had never been fond of clicking a photo with his son, but in the last few days, he had clicked some. To remember him. He ran his hands through the wide smile, reminding him what he gave up and what he had to do to achieve his goal. The world government will regret it. It will crumble under the heat of the fire of the world itself. It was evening, and the poor babe had already fallen asleep. The toddler kept on crying for his dad throughout the journey, which Garp made constantly, trying to keep him busy. He gave him some of the toys which Dragon had packed for the kid, but he kept on throwing it all over, only demanding for his dad. Some even fell in the waters, but due to the waves they were thrown back to the small dinghy. He also kept on trying to jump off the dinghy, but Garp wouldn't let him. He couldn't just lose the adorable baby. Garp looked at the sky. It was less cloudy now. No dark clouds, no heavy storms, no howling winds. When Luffy was crying, any normal person who didn't know them would think that the child was crying due to the storm which had been in action. But Garp knew what had happened. He knew that his grandson was going through the painful separation of the possibly first person he had ever seen in his life. Garp knew this pain. He had felt it always when he had to leave Dragon in the Fuchsia village for his betterment. He knew the gaping hole in the heart which occurred due to the lack of presence of someone. But it was all for the kid's goodness. The night summoned itself, the moon was clear, the waves were calm, and the winds were whistling a lullaby. In the mid of these were the two, Grandpa and the grandson. Garp had fallen asleep when he saw themselves enter a calm region. He had let the anchor down and slept holding his grandson, without a care. Luffy woke up and the first thing he searched for was his dad. He sniffled a sob and remembered his father's last words. His tiny hands held the small trinket his dad had given. He opened it to see his dad, Eva, and him. He bit his lower lip to stop himself from crying. But tears flowed from his eyes, relentlessly. A transparent watery hand was placed at the small boat, and Luffy tried to smile. The figure stood up slowly and climbed in the boat and picked up Luffy, who snuggled himself in the transparent figure's chest. They went down in the ocean where the figure tried making Luffy happy, making him smile. And it worked. Garp heard the splash of water and was jerked awake. He was alone on the boat. He was freaking alone. His grandson was nowhere to be seen. He panicked. It was his first day with his grandson, and yet he had managed to kill the boy. Without thinking anything, Garp jumped in the ocean and the sight left him speechless. His grandson was playing, running, laughing, and freaking talking in the sea. Garp didn't know how long was he staring, but he felt that he needed oxygen. He dived up, his mind wandering at what he had just seen. But one thing was sure, his grandson, Luffy, was safe. The gears of his mind turned in a rapid pace. What is Luffy? It did made sense that Luffy could be in water and play there, cause it's his freaking mom. But if Luffy was the son of the sea, then what is Luffy? A demigod? Or what? Then he remembered his best friend's words. But still it didn't make any sense. I saw Roger talk about this, but it can't be. Luffy's no deity, Garp's mind shrieked. When Makino first saw the crying boy attached to Garp, her heart broke. She just couldn't understand why the boy, so small, was crying. Garp was pouting, holding the boy close to his chest, letting him sob. The boy had been crying since the last week when he was separated from his dad, only stopping his wailings at the sight of food or candies. Why is he crying? Makino asked. She herself felt on the edge. Garp frowned. Papa. Luffy let out a choked sob, as he tried to rub his eyes with his tiny hands, messily. It was so cute. Garp looked around, seeing no one around, he sighed and said, he had to leave his dad. Before Makino could question further why this little kid was separated from his blood, Garp spoke. His dad is Dragon, my son. Makino gasped, understanding the problem. Dragon? Luffy asked as he raised his head for the first time from Garp's chest and blinked away the tears. His hands automatically went to the red prism hanging from his neck, hidden from everyone's sight by his shirt. Garp nodded at him. Why don't you introduce yourself to Makino? Garp asked, trying to avoid the topic. Luffy messily rubbed the remaining tears from his glossy eyes as he looked at Makino. The same soul-piercing stare. Makino stepped a foot back before her back hit the bar counter. She felt afraid. She felt nervous when the boy's brown eyes met her. She was certain she saw the boy's eyes turn golden for a second. After what seemed like hours to Makino, Luffy gave a wide smile. A smile, which can make anyone do anything for him. Then he spoke. Nika. I'm Nika. Garp froze at that. His eyes turned to horror as detaching him from his chest as he held the brat by the shoulders. His unspoken horror was just coming to life. What did you say? Garp's chest was pounding, his heart was beating rapidly. Luffy tilted his head, before again speaking the word, but Garp quickly shoved his hand to Luffy's mouth, stopping the kid from speaking. He placed the kid gently on the counter, looking him straight in the eyes. He could feel Luffy pouting through his hands. He gulped once more. Your name is Luffy. Monkey D. Luffy, Garp said, trying to drill the name into his mind. Luffy tilted his head again, seemingly not understanding a thing. If it would have been any other time, he would have to stop himself from not cooing. Why? The small brain could really not handle the name, it seems. What did your dad call you? Garp was ready to trash his son if he heard that he called him Nika. But he knew that was not the case. He noticed the tears were back in Luffy's eyes. Lu. Luffy sniffled a sob again. Garp ruffled Luffy's hair softly, giving Makino a side glance. He could see that the lady was confused, yet quiet. How about we call you Lu? Garp asked, trying to prevent him from any future dangers. Luffy seemed to tear up again. No, Luffy said, wanting to only be called Lu by his dad, Luffy. Garp nodded. You hungry, brat? Garp asked, and as a clue Luffy's stomach rumbled, making Garp and Makino laugh and Luffy pout adorably. Makino served Garp and Luffy and saw the kid struggle with his fork, mostly trying to figure out what he was supposed to do with the fork. He looked so damn captivating. In the end, it was Makino who fed Luffy, with Luffy enjoying the company of the barmaid. It has been 6 months, 6 freaking months, since Dragon has not seen the cheery sunshine smile. Since he had not heard any giggles of his son. Since he had not heard his son babbling all about what he has doing the whole day. Since he had not seen any of his stories, not read him a story at bedtime. Dragon took a deep breath, calming himself. He saw the papers lying on the table. Another kingdom on the verge of civil war. Another kingdom in the verge of destruction. Another kingdom where people will have to pay the price of the Marines. And in mid of this, Dragon can only graze his hand on the sunny smile of his son. The government was relentless in finding him. They were using his previous disappearance as a golden chance and were trying to find what, where and why was he not present in the Revolutionary Army, and why was the revolution still going on? Dragon's attention span was decreasing at an alarming rate. When he would see a kid at the age of Luffy, no one would know what was going in his mind. But Ivankov could tell he was missing Luffy. Ivankov was in Dragon's cabin, reporting him about the kingdom. Dragon banged his fists on the table, making him visibly flinch. Ivankov had noticed Dragon, his friend, losing his calm exterior, and with each mission, with each fallen kingdom or heinous act of government, he could Dragon losing his temper. Dragon boy, Ivankov pitied his best friend. Go visit Luffy. He gave a smile to Dragon. He even wanted to meet the boy, but Dragon was getting more antsy without him. I and Kuma will manage here till then. Dragon bit his lips. He sometimes would get confused how well his friend could read him. He thanked him and made a beeline to his railings and disappeared in the winds, 'cause he was the wind himself. Dragon was in the high town, not to pick fights with the nobles like he used to do, but to buy some gifts for his kid. What will Luffy like? His mind kept on questioning him. But he knew his kid more than anyone. He knew his passion for drawing, for sea, for adventure, for stories and for food. He picked up some delicacies, a storybook, which contained more picture, and a stuffed tiger, which he knew instantly will be loved by his son. He crossed the forest which came in the path to Fuchsia village. Last time he had been here, he was terrorizing Dayton and the animals. It was fun. He knew for one thing that Luffy would be given off to Dayton or Makino, and all his senses told him the boy would be with Makino. He was proved correct when he entered the bar and was met by Makino, who was cleaning the tables, with a tender smile on her face. His eyes went over to the black-haired toddler who was leaning onto one of the bars with colors in his hands. He decided to be sneaky. He could see Makino watching him curiously, his every movement, but when he removed his hood and he could, the realization dawn on her. She smiled tenderly at him and didn't mind him anymore. He took his steps forward and saw what his son was drawing. He could a green blob with red and skin colored on the upper part, a violet-colored blob nearby, and in the middle of those he could see a bright red blob with a wide grin on the upper half. The background had sea, and he could the sea taking shape of human. The trees with the green blob and the wind with the blue-colored scribbled everywhere. He chuckled, making Luffy turn his head towards him. He gave the brightest smile he could offer and opened his arms to him. He could see his son cock his head once, and then his face morphed into that of realization, and he leapt from his seat and jumped into Dragon's arms. The boy looked so happy, and Dragon was sure, right there and now, he wouldn't be able to leave his son soon. His sunshine was smiling with glee at him and snuggling as close as he can to him. Dragon ruffled the kid's hair softly, and the said kid looked up, his eyes all glossy. "I missed you," Luffy sniffled. Dragon couldn't help but bring his son to one more hug. It felt assuring to have him in his arms like before. It felt as if the void inside him was slowly filling up with his son. It felt good. It felt like heaven. "I missed you too, Luke," Dragon grinned at him. He gave him the candies, delicacies, the storybooks, and the stuffed tiger he got from him. Luffy forgot about the books and the tiger, and with his grabby hands he reached for the sweets and candies, though Makino scolded him for gobbling them right now and told him to eat at dinner. Luffy pouted at her, making her give up. "Papa, Papa," Luffy grinned as he clutched his hold on his sleeve tightly, and they were out of the bar. "I want you to meet my new friend." Dragon smiled at that thought. "I would love to," Dragon grinned. They reached the sea and emerged out of it a sea king. Dragon felt dread creep up as he saw the enormous sea king emerge out of the ocean. Without thinking he rushed to his son, who was way too closer to the sea king for his liking. He was midway to Luffy when his feet stopped, and he remembered the first time when a sea king had came out of nowhere. The sea king, which is a part of sea, a part of Luffy's mom, which directly indicates that it's a part of Luffy too. Dragon would have pulled Luffy into his arms, but he saw how the sea king looked at Luffy. It looked like how a friend would look at his friend. "His name is King," Luffy excitably started introducing his friend. "He was the only one who befriended me." Dragon could feel the sadness in his voice. Now that he thinks about that, he noticed how the small kids stayed away from Luffy. It was almost as if they fear him. Dragon rubbed his temple mentally. He wanted his kid to be safe and happy when he decided to send him in care of Garp, but he never thought he would turn out to be lonely. Luffy was a D in the Child of the Sea. With his energetic and supernatural strength, he probably had unknowingly scared the kids away. He just wished his son would make lots of friends in future. He saw how Luffy talked about his friend using his whole body. It looked funny and was not at all boring. Even when he would start yawning, he would bounce back and start jumping up and down and would talk to King and him. One more piece of puzzle. Sea kings are attracted to Luffy, and he can apparently talk to them. It is a fun to solve the puzzle which Luffy is, without asking him too much. If he wouldn't have known who his mom was, he would not let him go near water when he himself couldn't swim. After Luffy was taken from him, the sunset never felt as beautiful as today. The way the light distributes itself over the water, the thinness of the clouds over the sun, how everything is tinted red, how the glowing sun is a crisp circle in the rosy sky, illuminating a quivering way across the water. How the wispy cloud surrounds the sun in a soothing manner, the different colors in the sky. Everything looked so splendid and breathtaking, that Dragon forgot that his son was getting sleepy. He was woken from his trance by the head which popped on his lap. He saw Luffy sleeping peacefully on his lap, the sun rays reflecting on him and making his smile ever so sunny. He slowly picked up the kid in his arms, making sure the boy doesn't fall, and headed to Makino's bar. The kid woke up in an instant in the name of food. He again started talking all about Makino and the people in the village. He told him everything which he was up to, going to the forests, catching beetles, following them, chasing after rabbits, etc., and most of the time his food laid on the table forgotten, but he was doing that job, feeding him. How long has it been since he had been able to feed Lu, with him in his lap? He really wished to stay by his son's side, but he knew he will need to return, and that would break Luffy all again. Soon, the boy seemed to taper off, yawning between words, and seemingly drooping in his seat. Dragon nudged the boy, staring him for almost a minute of silence. "Perhaps you should go for bed. You can't keep telling me about all of the exciting things you've done if you fall asleep in your seat." Dragon offered the smaller a warm smile. The boy protested, whining up at his father about how he didn't want to sleep yet. "Please don't go. I want you to stay forever." Luffy leaned over, grabbing onto Dragon with a sleepy grip, blinking slowly at the man with a sad twinkle in his dark eyes. It broke Dragon's heart, and he knew he would have to break it further soon when he did have to return to the revolution. It would break his own heart knowing that Luffy's would be destroyed, but there was little he could do. He wanted to be selfish. He wanted his son to stay by his side and always keep smiling, but he knew he couldn't do that. Not now, the very least, when he knew that his son can't be seen with him, not right now. He stayed the next day, played with Luffy in the fields and the beaches, helped him in reading the stories from the storybooks, stayed by his side as much as he could. He helped his son in baths and helped him in his daily chores. One thing he noticed was Luffy was getting clingier, not that he minded, but it was a sign that he knew he would be left alone again, and that broke his heart into tiny pieces. It was already 2 weeks and he was still with Luffy. He wouldn't say he regretted any time he spent with his son, but he needed to go. He needed to return to his revolution. He crouched next to Luffy, who was bawling out, his tiny, grabby fingers clutched his green cloak. He started sobbing when he overheard him and Makino that he would be leaving. He couldn't do much. "I'm sorry, Lou," Dragon said, his own cracked voice. Whenever Luffy would cry, Dragon can't help but feel the heaviness in his heart, the void which threatened to choke him to death. "But I promised to come again." He tried to make Luffy stop crying. Luffy looked heartbroken, sad, and nothing like a sunshine. His son was having an eclipse right now. He hugged him into his chest. "I promise, I'll return again to you." Pro. Mize. Luffy looked up to Dragon, his big doe eyes questioning him. "Yeah, promise." Dragon smiled sadly at his son. "Till then, read the storybooks. I'll be back until you finish those and I'll have lots of stories to tell you." Luffy looked chirper at that. Dragon smiled seeing Luffy stop crying. He grinned as wide as he could. "I want to hear about pirates," Luffy grinned. His smile reached up to his ears. Dragon kissed his forehead in response and repeated, "Promise," and vanished in the strong winds. He could feel Luffy growing sad and teary, but he had promised to come again. And he will do it. As the days, weeks, months, and years went by, Makino saw Luffy grow up, smiling happily, jumping around, and bringing smiles to the faces of everyone he met. She was glad that whenever Luffy was close to his loneliness, his dad will appear to cheer him up. She saw Luffy play with his dad for days and she saw how the man visibly relaxed. She could swear that Luffy was his stress killer and painkiller. He was his sunshine. Sometimes his timing would go wrong and he would meet Garp, but luckily would escape with a fist of love, which both son and grandson would get. It was almost funny to see the world's most dangerous criminal pout with his son to his father. Whenever Dragon would visit, he and Luffy would spend hours on the beach, playing, and Dragon would always have a bunch of stories for Luffy. Dragon would thank her for taking care of her son. The village respected Dragon. He grew up here, and no one would sell him out. It was heartwarming reunion whenever Dragon would visit Luffy, and when the time would come for Dragon to leave Luffy, Luffy would get sappy and whiny. But Dragon had work which could not be neglected. Sometimes a violet-haired Okama would also drop by, sometimes being a woman and other times in his usual way. It was scary at first, but then slowly people in the village melted to him too. It was heartwarming to see Luffy smile brightly always. But Luffy felt lonely, and she knew that. The way he stared at the ocean, with such fondness and loving eyes, which he used only for people very close to him. She saw him grow up, running around the shores, playing with the water, sometimes alone and sometimes with his dad and Eva. But above all of it, Makino saw Luffy wanted friends of his age, which was not possible in the village he was. Most children were afraid of his grandfather and took it on Luffy. At those times, it was hard to keep Dragon on leash. He didn't like it at all, when they called his son a freak. At first, she had been worried that the water wolf only saw Luffy getting to the shore, playing with water, and sometimes swimming. She saw the waves sometimes getting high and splashing water on him, playfully. It felt like Luffy had even bewitched the ocean, but she was always nervous when she saw him dive inside, but only for him to come to the surface after a few seconds. She had always run to Luffy whenever she saw the black-haired raven dipping in. But her worries were always in vain. Luffy always chuckled and giggled at the worried face Makino made. It made her feel good to know that despite the kids in the village refusing to play with him, that they called him a freak, he never remained sad. He would bounce back soon and forgive them easily. She wondered how he did that. He was 4 when she and Luffy were on the beach, walking, and then Luffy wanted to get into the water, which she let him do. But she was left horrified when the Sea King emerged from the ocean. She ran into the water, without thinking anything, but the only thing on her mind was to save Luffy. But the next she saw Luffy sitting on top of the Sea King and petting him. She was beyond shocked. Her legs and knees were shaking, and her eyes bawled out as she called for Luffy, for him to be safe. She didn't even care for herself as she tried to approach the Sea King, barehanded, but the next she knows, the Sea King bowing his head and letting Luffy in her arms. Luffy pouted and wiped Makino's tears and gave her a tight hug. Makino had instinctively taken a step back, fearing that the Sea King will attack. but she saw the Sea King vanished in the waters. She made a mental note to not allow Luffy in these waters anymore. Luffy frowned before turning to Makino. "He is my friend," he told her with an assuring look. Makino had said nothing. She tightly held the boy and made her way to the bar, failing to notice the way the water crept up to Luffy's legs and him giggling. All she wanted was to take Luffy somewhere secure, to cry her eyes out, to forget the memory which will probably haunt her for some days. She had nearly lost Luffy. She didn't even consider the fact that Luffy had made the Sea King his friend. She was scared out of her mind. It wasn't long after that Dragon and Garp arrived and she told them everything, about how the Sea King had lifted Luffy and how she thought that she had lost him. How Luffy told that it was his friend. Luffy, who was having his breakfast, pouted and repeated that he really is a friend. At that, Garp had chuckled. He told Makino not to worry too much. But Makino couldn't help at that time. She had tried to keep Luffy away from those waters as much as possible, but Luffy somehow always managed to get past her. Dragon hadn't responded much but looked at the ocean as if that was the answer which she needed and she didn't understand anything. Slowly, she learned to trust the Sea King. Slowly, most of the people in the village came to know the reality that Luffy had made the Lord of the Coast his friend. After this, most children stayed out of his way, never even trying to mess with the boy. Some who dared threw punches at the kid and called him a freak. Luffy only pouted at them, never crying. Sometimes, when he felt too much he would throw a punch or two, making the boys quiet instantly. Elderly people tried to stay on the good side of the kid, so they could pass the coast with ease, without having any encounters with the beast. Luffy felt quite annoyed with the turn of events, so he mostly chose to stay at the beach, playing with water, sitting quietly, and giggling at the funny stories his mom told him. That was comforting. The soothing water on his skin only reminded him of the gentle touch of his dad and Eva, when they would play with him and accompany him in his many mischiefs. He had managed to pull off pranks of Mayor Wood's slap, though he got scolded for that from the mayor, but Luffy was Luffy who heard from one ear and forgot from another. Luffy often wondered why he couldn't live with his dad and aunt. He even asked sometimes, but all he got in reply was that he was small and he wouldn't understand right now. He pestered his mother for an answer, but Mama only told that he, someday, can stay with his family, his dad and his aunt. That would make him feel better always. His mother would whisper fondly about the stories of his childhood with them. He huffed at places where he did something incredibly silly and laughed wholeheartedly where he did something foolish and made his father and aunt laugh. That day, Luffy returned home, or rather Makino's bar, with a full smile, not the fake and forced one that he was giving the whole day. He was genuinely happy. Makino later told him that Garp was visiting soon, which made Luffy beam out more. Makino felt Luffy literally beaming like the sun. Garp and Luffy were at the beach where Luffy was playing with the sand and making sand castles. He looked happy and Garp observed the kid with keen and fond eyes. "Grandpa?" Luffy asked as he lifted his head from the so-called castle that he had made. He looked towards Garp with a gummy smile. Garp hummed as he asked him to continue. "I want to be strong," Luffy said with determination in his eyes. Garp could see the sparkles of wonder. He could see the same resolution which he saw in Dragon all those years ago. "And why do you want to be?" Garp asked as approached the grinning kid. He saw Luffy thinking hard, with his face scrunched, and his face turning red. Garp laughed. "Do you want to be a marine?" Garp's eyes lit up at the possibility. His mind racing thousands kilometers per second about the benefits which Luffy can get. Luffy scrunched his face in disgust. He poked his tongue out before speaking. "I don't like marines." Garp couldn't help but reward him with a fist of love. "You will become a fine marine," he said as he lifted up the boy and started advancing to the jungle for training. Later, that day the sea seemed louder than usual. Makino didn't think much of it. Suddenly the doors opened to the bar. Luffy returned to Makino all beaten up and bloody. Makino hurried to tend to the boy, horrified by his wounded bozy and the half-lit eyes and a small smile that he was giving. "What happened?" she asked as she readied herself to clean the wounds. Luffy coughed before sitting up on the counter, where Garp placed him. "T-train. Ain." Makino glared at Garp, who ignored her gaze and whistled. "I might have overdid it," Garp said or asked. "Throwing him off the cliff, making him fight the monkeys and tying him with balloons." "Nope, he would be fine," Garp said as he left the bar. Makino could only gasp in horror as she tended to the boy slowly, not hurting him further. Their occasional training was going more brutal than Makino could have ever thought. Whenever Garp visited, he left Luffy immobile or unconscious. She had protested, but Luffy himself had told her that he wants that. He had expressed his desire to become strong, and she can't help but feel herself give up at the puppy eyes that she was offered. Whenever Dragon would arrive at those times when Garp would be training his son, he would be petrified to see Luffy emerging from a jungle or trying to climb a cliff with him bleeding over all. Sometimes he would have to pull his son from air, where he would be struggling to get himself out of the balloons. He was angry at his dad for using such extreme methods. He was angry that his son was hurt. But Garp would always manage to escape the wrath of his son and would say it was for the benefit of his own son. Luffy would back up sometimes, saying that he wanted it. That he wanted to be stronger. And when Dragon would ask the reason, he would grin and say that he doesn't want to be a dead weight on others. That was when Dragon realized that Luffy knew the actual reason why he couldn't live with him. Dragon couldn't help but see his son get injured and being patched up at the end of the day. He needs to change that soon. But he needs a trigger and some confidence that Luffy will be safe in Baltigo. That he would be fine even when he wouldn't be around, when he wouldn't be able to watch over him. Unknown to Dragon, he would be getting a reason soon enough. It was a pleasant morning when Makino felt Luffy was missing. Without thinking, she had assumed that he would be near the shore, playing again. So, she headed to the shore but found no signs of the little one. She rushed to the dock, trying to find the boy, and she got him. "Luffy, what are you doing here?" she asked, trying to forget the worries and her beating heart which she had felt when she found Luffy missing. "Someone's coming," Luffy said with a happy tone. Makino wondered about who the person was. So, she decided to wait with Luffy there. It was soon that they spotted a pirate ship heading towards their dock. She felt panicked as she gazed at Luffy. She knew about Luffy's instincts and had learned to not question it, but what if they were bad pirates? What if they would harm Luffy? She couldn't help but keep an eye on the kid. The sounds of party littered from the ship. There were cheers coming from it. The pirates seemed to be happy. A man with red hair and a straw hat approached near the railing to take a look at the island before him. But his eyes landed on a smiling boy. The moment their eyes had connected, he felt a jolt and spark running through his body. He felt himself losing his footing. He felt himself being nervous for the first time in East Blue, the weakest sea of the world. He placed a hand on his heart as he tried to make it beat normally. He averted his eyes from the boy. He felt Ben approaching him, confused at his actions. "Are you pirates?" they heard the little boy ask. They could see him turning from serious to smiling happily, giving them a gummy smile. Shanks couldn't help but nod slowly. He regained his composure and gave a laugh as he stepped in front of the kid, studying the kid slowly. He looked like a 5-year-old kid, wore a white shirt with the words, "Anchor," blue shorts and sandals. He looked scrawny. "Dahaha, aren't you afraid of us?" he asked as he crouched down to the level of the kid. He felt the sensation and his instincts were screaming that this was no normal kid. The black-haired raven titled his head sideways, adorably leaving Shanks to avoid his desire of cooing. "Why should I?" the kid asked. Shanks ruffled the kid's hair as he tried to explain the boy that not all pirates are good and some can harm him if he would be careless. At this the little boy pouted. "Nua, my punch is as strong as a pistol." He grinned as he punched the air. Shanks burst out laughing, clutching his stomach, as he fell on the ground comically. "Yeah, dahahaha, you're poo pfft." Shanks was laughing. "Anchor," he said finally. Luffy huffed and crossed his arms on his chests. "My name is Luffy. Not Anchor, stupid Shanks." At this, Shanks felt himself stop laughing. He will admit he was quite famous, but he didn't know that he was even famous in the East Blue. He felt himself proud. "Come on, you gotta tell me your adventures," Luffy whined adorably, using his puppy eyes. "Mom told you have lots of adventure to tell me, I want to hear it all." Shanks was about to say something when a green-haired maiden appeared in his sights. At the first sight of the lady, Shanks felt his heartbeat stop for a moment. He saw the pretty lady bow to him, before greeting. "Hello there, my name is Makino." She offered him a kind smile. "I have a bar not too far from here, if you and your men want to rest." Her voice floated in Shanks's mind like a soft melody. Ben chuckled from the back as he approached his captain and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Don't you think she is taken, Captain?" Shanks looked at Ben before pouting like a small child. Makino, they have lots of stories to tell me," the kid cheered. Makino smiled gladly at the little boy before ruffling his hair. "Thank you for engaging by Otoutu." As soon as she said, Shanks' face lit with a happy smile, as he turned all his attention to Makino, before poking his tongue out to Ben, who snickered at the childishness. "The name is Shanks." Shanks did a bow, like the ones princes do to their princess. "The pleasure's all mine, my lady." He grinned as he kissed her hands. Then he turned back to order his crew to not make any ruckus in the village. Inside the bar, Luffy was jumping up and down, while listening to the stories from Shanks. He was vibrating with excitement. Shanks was comically telling the stories to the little anchor, happy to make the child grin. Few months soon passed. The Red Force was attached and very fond of their little anchor. They loved the smile and puppy eyes which he gave them. The smile of the child can make anyone forget anything. Little did the kid knew that he already had the pirates wrapped in his fingers. Shanks, I want to be Ned as wide as he could. I want to go to adventures, take me with you, please." "Nope," Shanks simply said and turned his attention to the booze in his hands. "Why? I'm strong," Luffy whined as he stomped his feet on the ground. "Dahahaha. You, strong, peeved." Shanks burst out laughing. Luffy huffed as he saw Shanks making fun of him. "I'm going out," Luffy huffed as he went to the shore. "You overdid it, Captain," Ben sighed, as he saw his captain walking out of the door to follow the kid. Luffy pouted as he made his way to his mother. He dived in the water, letting the calming water to soothe him. He pouted and wondered why Shanks refused to take him out to the sea. He was frowning. His mother tried to coax the little boy, telling him he should not give up. Luffy nodded. Then he found his friend, King, rise from the ocean. He began playing with him, without a care of the world. It tickles, Luffy laughed as the Sea King continued to brush against Luffy. I also missed you, King. Luffy petted the Sea King, landing on top of him. Let's go on an adventure, he said happily as the Sea King dived down in the water, taking Luffy to the depths of the ocean, allowing him to talk and play with the fishes, and collect some seashells. As Shanks approached the beach, he saw Luffy sitting on top of the Sea King, which was dragging him down. He panicked. He dived down after the boy, worried sick for his safety. But when he dived down, he heard the cheers of the boy. He felt himself froze at his place. He saw the kid play with the other fishes. He saw him run on the bed of the ocean floor, which should be dark, but no, it was surrounded by pure light. He soon resurfaced to catch up a breath before diving down again. He saw the kid run and play happily. He saw him talking to the Sea King, which felt impossible. Lots and lots of questions plagued his mind, but one thing was sure, that Luffy was safe. He found no killer intent from the Sea King. He found that the kid felt no problem in breathing. Why was he able to run in the seawater? Why can he breathe normally there? Why did the Sea King seem so friendly? Why did the bottom of the ocean glow when it shouldn't be glowing at such depths? There were more questions than answers. The first possibility that he thought of was of Luffy being a fishman. But again, the boy had no features like a fishman. And no fishmen can talk to Sea Kings. Unknown to Shanks, two eyes were watching his every move. Shanks was lost in his thoughts when he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see that it was Makino. Makino frowned as she saw Shanks looking at the ocean. Where is Luffy? She asked as she sat beside him, seeing the sun go down. In the ocean, Shanks said, disbelieving himself. He saw from the corner of his eyes, Makino's eyes widening. What is Luffy? Shanks finally voiced his question. He has seen things that don't make sense in the Grand Line, but not in the Blues. But not even he has seen a boy, who is not a fishman, talking to the Sea King and staying in the water and able to talk. Makino's smile softened as she shrugged. He is a mystery to me even. He was given to me to take care 4 years ago. Makino smiled at the fond memory. As time passed, I felt him growing more mysterious, unraveling his secrets, but I don't even think that I have learned even some part of him. He can talk to the Sea Kings. Shanks gulped as he spoke. That's something new to me, Makino said as she smiled. He can walk on the seabed, talk in the water, and do not need oxygen to breathe like normal humans, Shanks said as he saw bubbles rising from the ocean. He stood up and offered a hand to Makino, who gladly took it. Can I be sure the information doesn't leak from here? A stoic, cold voice came hovering over Shanks and Makino, making them flinch. Makino recognized the voice instantly without even turning and nodded. She won't ever let others know these, she was sure. Shanks frowned and looked back. He knew the voice but couldn't pinpoint it. When Shanks turned to face the man, his eyes widened. What are ya doing here? Shanks asked. The said man stood beside him and looked at the vast ocean and the place where his son disappeared. He knew Luffy had many secrets with him, but he felt that Shanks can be trusted. Came to visit my son, Dragon shrugged. Shanks' eyes widened at that. He had never thought that Dragon would have a son. He has known enough of the man and had known him from childhood. Luffy is your son. Shanks was ignored when Dragon stepped forward towards the ocean and looked at the bubbles in the waters. The ocean tore apart to reveal the Sea King and Luffy. Luffy enjoying the ride of the Sea King. Papa, Shanks, Makino, they waved back. Luffy jumped down from the Sea King and petted his head, which was near the level of the kid. Thanks for playing with me, King, Luffy said as kissed the presumed cheek of the Sea King. The Sea King did a weird dance before leaving the boy. Bye. Good night, Mom, Luffy said softly as he bent down and let the water envelop him once more and lead him to the shore. Luffy waved back to the ocean and skipped toward Makino and then jumped in his dad's arms and giggled. Makino, I am hungry. Luffy pouted as his stomach agreed with his words. Makino offered him a smile and started heading toward the bar. Luffy, Shanks said as he picked up the boy and placed him on his shoulders. How did you? Shanks felt himself at the loss of words. Luffy titled his head, not understanding the question. What, Shanks? Luffy said, followed by a yawn. How can you stay in the water for such long time? How can talk to a Sea King? Isn't it dangerous? Shanks felt himself asking, even though it was not his place to ask. But he had already grown attached to Anchor. After spending almost 6 months, he can't believe that Anchor can do all of those. Shanks could see Dragon trying to stifle his laughter. Luffy tilted his head in confusion. Why is it be dangerous? He asked, allowing another yawn to slip through him. He wanted to eat and sleep. But stupid Shanks. Luffy pouted. It's dangerous for kids like you, Shanks mumbled. Nope, Luffy said as he slipped past him and ran to the bar in hope of getting some food. Shanks sighed. He understood he won't be getting any straight answers from the kid. Not right now, at least, when the little one is hungry as well as sleepy. He could have asked from Dragon, but from the face of his, He was sure that he won't be getting any answers soon. Sigh. After that day, Shanks just got accustomed to Luffy's mysterious behaviors and learned better not to question. Luffy stood on the figurehead of the Red Force, with his hands holding a knife. He raised the knife proudly in the air. "I'm not joking this time. I'll prove to you that I am strong," Luffy said with determination, screaming. "Haha, go for it. Let's see what you're gonna do," Shanks said. Little did he know what was about to happen. Luffy raised the knife to his face without any hesitation and poked it under his eyes. Arghh, Luffy felt the pain coursing through his body. "Wah. Ouchouchh, I idiot. What the hell are you doing?" Shanks yelled as he ran to catch Luffy from losing his balance. The waves hit hard on the ship in anger, making many pirates fall on the deck harshly. Luffy managed to grin through the pain. "It's okay. It doesn't hurt at all," Luffy said with tear-filled, glossy eyes. He was soon bandaged by the ship's doctor and brought to the bar. Later, Shanks will learn that the wound was enough to threaten his eyesight, but the little one escaped with only a scar. In the party's bar, the pirates were celebrating and making toast for Luffy's craziness and their greatness. The bar was filled with a joyful aura as everyone drank, laughed, and sang songs. And in the middle of this, sat a small boy whose eyes were glossy and who refused to admit that the wound hurts, with Shanks scolding him and telling him not to repeat it. But Luffy only wanted to go for an adventure. He wanted to go out to the sea and venture into unknown places. He wanted to be a pirate. He wants to live with his own rules and regulations. He wants to be the freest man ever. But Shanks didn't want to take him with him. Maybe one of the reasons Shanks saw was that Luffy was the type to lead and not follow someone. "My punches are strong as pistol," Luffy argued as he punched the air. "I've rigorously trained before." "Pistol? Wow. Really?" Shanks said in an unimpressed tone. "What kind of tone is that?" Luffy frowned. Shanks's crewmates did a happy dance in front of Luffy, igniting his determination for becoming a pirate. They told him the wonders of being a pirate and the freedom they get. Luffy listened to them with stars in his eyes. Luffy grinned happily at them. "Yep, I know, sailing to faraway places with friends is the best thing that could ever happen." "Don't give him these dumb ideas, guys," Shanks said as he continued munching on his food. "But it's the truth, right?" Lucky Roo said, grinning. "Captain, why don't you take him with us one time? It's not a big deal." Luffy jumped in enthusiasm but was soon deflated when Shanks asked the pirates to give their seats for the kid and everyone betrayed Luffy. Luffy huffed as he sat on the table and started munching on the food. "The most important thing is that you're still too young," Shanks continued, but Luffy's attention was now caught in the other thing. The chest that lay on the counter. The chest had something in it and it was calling for him. He suddenly felt empty, like something was missing. That was when the door creaked open, with a large bang. Luffy's attention snapped to the bandit as he stared into his eyes. He frowned and paid his attention to the chest. He opened the chest with his small hands and saw the familiar fruit stare back at him. A smile found a way to Luffy's face, as he gulped the fruit in one go and chuckled at the weird taste. He felt himself complete. The part that he was missing was back to him. His attention was again taken up by the bandit who had thrown the bottle of sake on Shanks. The bandit did better to leave, otherwise, he would have been sprawled on the floor. Dirty bastard. Shanks was sitting on the floor drenched in sake. Luffy felt anger course through him. Soon, Shanks burst out laughing, followed by the whole bar. Luffy stood up in his seat and yelled, "Why are you laughing?" The bar turned silent, and some weaker pirates dropped on the floor unconscious. That was disgraceful. Makino felt herself losing control of her body as she slumped forward to Shanks, who easily caught her. "Who laughs after getting picked on? You're not a man, and a pirate either," Luffy huffed harshly as he tried to regain his breathing. Some more pirates fell from their seats and landed on the ground. "Luffy." Shanks's face was full of shocked expressions. He couldn't believe what just happened. He remained calm as he tried to speak. "Do you know what you just did?" Shanks asked calmly. Luffy narrowed his eyes at him, still angry, and huffed. Shanks sighed when he understood he won't be getting any answer. "Look, I know how you feel, but it's just a bottle of sake. There is nothing to get worked up about." Shanks tried to explain, but Luffy walked past him. Shanks caught his arms before he can walk through. "I don't want to see you," Luffy said as he tried to get away, but it was his limbs that stretched, making the pirates shriek. Ehhhh. The pirates spit their drink. Their eyes popped out of their sockets, and their jaws dropped to the ground as they saw the limbs stretch. "What?" Luffy said as he turned to see his stretched limbs. He was not at all surprised. Why would he be shocked in the first place even? It was his body. It was the way his body always worked, with freedom. His arms. It stretched. The pirates shrieked, waking up the others who had fallen into the abyss of unconscious. "So what?" Luffy huffed. His arms snapped back to them, and he crossed his arms on his chest, trying to show he was still angry. "It's gone." Lucky Roo yelled as he picked up the now empty chest and showed it to Shanks. "The Gomu Gomu fruit we took from the enemy isn't here." "Luffy, did you eat this?" Lucky Roo asked frantically as he pointed to the drawing of the fruit. Luffy pouted, "Yay, I did." "That's the Gomu Gomu fruit," Shanks yelled. Before he can speak more, Luffy burst out laughing. "Silly Shanks," he laughed harder. "What are you laughing at? It's one of the devil's fruits and one of the rarest treasures in the sea." Luffy ignored that and continued to laugh harder. "Whoever eats it will turn into a rubber man and will never be able to swim." Luffy abruptly stopped laughing and stared with big wide eyes at Shanks, horror screaming from his eyes. "No, you are lying. Mom will never abandon me," Luffy yelled as he rushed out of the bar, followed by a worried Shanks and Makino. Tears were dripping from those innocent eyes as he ran as fast as possible to his mom. Without thinking, he jumped into the soft embrace of his mother's arms. His heart was racing, his face all red and tears were flowing endlessly. He hiccuped when he felt himself stay afloat on the ocean. He wiped his tears messily and stifled that upper lip of his. He wrapped his limbs around his legs as he allowed himself to control his whining. "Luffy!" Shanks and Makino yelled as they went to scoop the boy, thinking that he was unable to move and was drowning. Luffy looked up at Shanks, who was above him, and glared at him. "That was cheap, bastard," Luffy said as he let himself fall into his mother's embrace. He puffed his cheek. "I told you mom's never gonna abandon me." Shanks stood there dumbly. He saw how the devil fruit user didn't sink into the ocean. He saw him stay afloat without the need to swim. He saw how the waters cradled him, and he freaking saw the two hands made up of water, cradling the boy's cheek and the other rubbing away the tears. He gulped. He knelt to the boy. Makino had approached by now. "Luffy, who is your mother?" Shanks asked hesitantly. Luffy sat up on the ocean as if it was his bed and tilted his head in confusion. "Mom." Luffy pointed towards the vast ocean. Shanks felt his breath catch in his throat, and to Makino, things started making sense. Shanks shared a glance with Makino and saw the pale expression of the lady. He slowly picked up the boy and freaking noticed how the water clinging to him. Luffy whined at being taken away, so Shanks allowed the kid to play in the waters, with his mom. Shanks and Makino sat on the shore, quiet, no sounds escaped, except the happy giggling of the boy. They were connecting their recent findings with everything they had got. They both turned to each other at the same time and nodded. The bar was kicked open as the bandits from early entered. Luffy turned his head towards the bandits and frowned. He really disliked them. The bandits soon started crackling jokes about the pirates, whom they have apparently defeated. Luffy was fuming with anger. He finally burst out and ordered them to fucking apologize. Higuma stood up from his seat and approached the boy, grabbed his collars and punched him. Luffy's fierce eyes never left Higuma's. Higuma felt a strange feeling. His mind and heart were already telling him to run, telling him to hide, but he refused. Makino pleaded the bandit to leave the boy, but it only increased Higuma's confidence as he dragged the boy out of the tavern and pinned him to the ground. Luffy was screaming to the man to apologize to Shanks, and with each scream Higuma felt one of his men drop on the ground. He gulped, but he couldn't be terrified of the boy, and no way that this was the boy who had made his men drop on the ground. "You little shit." Higuma kicked Luffy hard on his stomach, throwing him far for him, but Luffy sprang up to his feet and charged at Higuma again, but got held up in the air. Higuma was yelling at Luffy, pulling his cheeks and talking about selling him. Luffy was not listening anything, he just wanted these men to apologize. Shanks entered the premises and a gun was pointed on his head. He asked the bandit if he was ready to risk his life. And the bandit was shot by Lucky Roo. Soon the remaining bandits lay on the ground unconscious. Higuma felt that he couldn't win, so he used a smoke bomb to flee from the scents. But he was up for a bad luck. Luffy smirked at the man when the bandit dropped him off the boat, thinking he would sink, but what the bandit saw made him drop on his knees. He saw his hostage freaking stand on the waters. He heard a roar from his back as he slowly turned his head to meet the eyes of an angry Sea King. The Sea King roared in the face of the asshole, and Higuma had the decency to yell for help. But the Sea King finished the pathetic excuse for a human in one big gulp. The Sea King bowed his head towards Luffy, who gently patted it for the good work. Luffy climbed up the beast and reached the docks where Shanks and Makino were waiting for him. Luffy pouted and turned to Shanks to tell that the asshole didn't apologize and was dead now. Shanks felt speechless, but glad that Luffy was alive. He later explained Luffy that some people are not worth fighting and thanked him for taking their sides. "Papa," Luffy cheered happily when he felt his dad approach him and lift him in his arms. He always loves the hugs his dad would give. "I know what I want to be." Dragon ruffled the soft hair of the small boy in his arms. They were walking in the forest playing hide and seek before it. "What is it?" Dragon smiled, waiting to hear his kid. "I want to be the freest man in the world. So, I am gonna be the Pirate King." The sun shone on the kid's face brightly. "I would accept nothing less from you, Luke." Dragon tossed Luffy in the air, making the kid squeal in delight. How he loves his son. He is too adorable to be not pampered. It was time for them to leave. Shanks felt sad to leave Luffy and Makino, but he had his adventures and he felt it calling him. He ruffled Luffy's hair as he tried to lessen the sad atmosphere. You really are leaving this time? Luffy pouted. He liked Shanks and his crews. They're his first human friends. Yep, he said looking at his surroundings. We stayed here long enough. It's time we move on, Shanks said. Are you upset? Nope, I'll become a pirate by myself, Luffy said with a grin. Hey, I wouldn't take you even if you begged me. Shanks poked his tongue out, teasing the little kid. You don't even have what it takes to be a pirate. I do, Luffy said. Shanks could see something, which he had never seen in the carefree little child. One day, I'll find myself a crew that is stronger than yours, Luffy huffed, and become the king of pirates. The words were clear to everyone. Everyone saw the little boy glow with determination. But what Shanks saw were the golden eyes that appeared for a moment. Shanks saw what no one saw, a boy standing in front of him, in pure white, grinning with complete confidence. Shanks was left speechless for a moment, but then he smiled. Oh, so you want to be bigger than us, huh? His hands went towards his hat. Well then. He stared at his hat lovingly. This hat, Shanks plopped it on Luffy's head, hiding his eyes, is my gift to you. Luffy felt the tears which he had been holding back flow like damn. This is my favorite hat, you know. When you become great pirate in the future, return that hat to me. Shanks started moving towards his ship, but his gaze sticked on Luffy. That kid's gonna be big, Ben said as Shanks approached him. I know, Shanks smiled. He reminds me of the words my captain said. Grandpa. Luffy beamed as he found a beetle on his way. He observed it fighting with the other beetle with starry eyes. I know why I want to be strong. Luffy grinned as he looked at his grandpa. Garp laughed. So you finally decided to be a marine. Luffy frowned at that, crossed his arms on his chest. Why would I want to be a marine? Luffy poked his tongue out. I want to be a pirate. No wait, not that. Luffy was cut off by Garp's fist of love to his grandson, but his hands bounced off. He stared at the boy with wide eyes. Devil fruit? Garp asked as he looked at Luffy. He still remembers how he was playing in water, but who was he kidding? His mother herself is the sea. Why are they called that? Luffy frowned. Garp saw Luffy's eyes and proceeded to say, "'Cause those who eat one lose their ability to swim." Luffy pouted. Shanks even told me that, but I thought he was lying. So which fruit is it? Garp asked as he saw Luffy run around again. I named it Hito Hito no Mi. Model Nika. Luffy grinned. Garp felt himself froze at his path once again. What does the boy mean by naming the devil fruit? And what the fuck? Luffy, I have told you. Garp got the hold of the boy. To not use that word. Luffy pouted once again. I don't understand you. He huffed and started to squirm his way out of the man's grip. Garp sighed. He knew that the thick-headed grandson of his won't listen to him. He can't allow the kid to roam in Fuchsia anymore. So, he started walking towards the one place where he knew the brat will be safe. Why don't you tell me why you want to be strong? Garp asked, trying to distract the boy from frowning and pouting. As he thought, Luffy smiled widely before turning to Garp. I want to be the Pirate King, Luffy grinned, followed by a giggle. Garp felt himself smiling a bit, but coolant helped worry engulf him. So, you want the legendary treasure, One Piece? Garp asked as his eyes never left Luffy. The brat was playing with the butterflies, beetles, grasshoppers and whatnot. You had to reach the end of the world for it. Luffy turned towards him again and grinned. The sun shone on his face as he proceeded to speak his next words. Yep, I'll find it. They were standing in front of Dayton's hideout. Garp banged the door and in response a voice yelled to stop banging the door. Dayton got out of the door and her eyes popped out of her sockets as she saw Garp standing and laughing outside in all his glory. Then, her eyes landed on the kid which was dangling in the hands of the man. Garp noticed this and laughed. Luffy looked up and his eyes caught that of Dayton. Dayton felt her knees give up when the gaze of the kid landed on her. She was lucky to have caught the wall, otherwise she was sure that her legs would have given up. Then the kid started giggling and laughing. His grin was too wide. Dogra and Mogra, who came after they heard Dayton yell, were met by the same gaze, and had dropped to their knees. Garp laughed, and Luffy broke the eye contact finally. Luffy say hi, Garp grinned. Yo! Luffy gave them a bright smile. The bandits felt their breath catching up to them. Take care of him, FN Ned. He is my grandson. The bandits paled in horror. They can't tackle a monster. The boy felt too powerful. Moreover, Garp's real grandson means a lot. They tried to deny it with all their might, but Garp just picked his nose. Luffy had squirmed his way from Garp's grip and was now exploring the area. He felt someone looking at him and his eyes caught that of a glaring boy. Luffy felt hatred, despair, agony, loneliness and all negative sad emotions coming from the boy. He felt sad. He saw how the boy hated himself and not others. He saw how the boy questioned his own existence. Luffy frowned at that and felt himself dodging the spit. Garp came from behind and saw Luffy's sad eyes linger on Ace. He patted Ace and told that Luffy was his little brother now. Ace ignored the two and banged the door on their faces. Luffy turned to Garp and asked why Ace held so much sadness and pain within him. Garp smiled sadly at that. He didn't say anything. It was not his place to speak. But Luffy declared soon enough that he will change it. He will make Ace happy, and he rushed to the bandit's house. Garp chuckled. He knew he can. He then left the place. Ace was in his room, catching his breath. When he met his kid's eyes, he felt that all his secrets were left open in front of the kid to see. He hated it. He hated how he lost his control over his body and averted his gaze. He should have acted soon. How ridiculous it felt to him to be scared of a kid for a moment. Ace gritted his teeth. Luffy tressed his hands towards the meat, but was snapped back by the curly women, who told him that it was Ace who had caught it, so he won't get any. He only received a bowl of rice and a glass of water. He was also told what he would have to do as a bandit and that he can't complain to his grandpa about it. Luffy didn't pay attention to the fat woman and dumped the rice in his mouth, before drooling on the meat, which he wasn't allowed to eat. The bandit told him that he had to fend for himself if he wants to eat, to which shrugged. Grandpa used to throw me into the jungle. There's a bunch of stuff I can eat, Luffy grinned. Also, Mama can feed me if I ask. Luffy spoke the last sentence like a whisper. He then saw Ace leave the house, so he followed him. He wanted to be friends with him. Hey, I'm Luffy, Luffy grinned. Be my friend. Ace frowned at that and kicked a tree. It started to roll over, taking Luffy with him. But Luffy stubbornly followed Ace. Ace was in the bridge when he saw the boy again. He shook the bridge violently, making the kid lose his footing and fall in the valley. When he returned back, he was asked about the whereabouts of the boy, which he replied that he doesn't know. It was after a week that Luffy returned to the hideout, all tired, clothes torn and covered in wounds. As soon as he reached the door and opened it, he heard the curly woman yell something at him about where he was. He huffed and told them that he was chased by the wolves. He then drifted off to sleep. He woke up the next day to his growling stomach. He saw Ace leaving, so he followed the boy and told him to be friends with him again. But as usual, he was ignored and he still managed to lose sight of him. Sometimes he would fall in the river, and that was the only best thing that could happen to him after a stressful day of trying to find Ace. His mother would tell him to not lose his patience and continue looking. But she would snicker at his attempts playfully. She told him about how strong Ace was and told him why he held so much hatred inside him. Luffy understood it and promised his mom to make Ace happy. Those were the only times he would be able to eat something filling. Luffy kept losing Ace. Day after day, 1 month then 2 months. On rainy days and windy days, he kept on following Ace. He pushed on despite his injuries. Today was another day of losing sight of the boy when a bear apparently thought to attack him. Ace was hiding nearby and watched the boy facing the bear, his hands clutching his pipe tightly, ready to take down the bear. Luffy pouted at the angry animal. Hey, Luffy waved his hand. The bear seemed to have stopped to look at his possible future meal. Have you seen Ace? The bear looked around, not thinking that he was the one to be asked. But he found no one. He looked at his meal again, ready to roar. Come on, Luffy whined. You can tell me that much. The bear looked again down. Is he asking me? The bear spoke. Silly Mr. Bear. Luffy giggled. Who else is here than any of us? You can listen to me? The bear asked with wide eyes. Yep. Luffy grinned. So, have you seen Ace? The bear shook his head and Luffy puffed his cheeks adorably and went to the other side to find Ace. Ace, who was seeing all these things happen, left quickly. He ran to Sabo to tell about the mysterious kid, whose gaze feels like he is unraveling the person's truth, and who freaking talked with a bear. Sabo just took it as a joke. It was almost 3 months of chasing after Ace when he had again lost track. He was now in the middle of a garbage dump. It stinks. But Luffy felt no problem as he kept on walking ahead, in search of Ace. Bad people stopped in his path, but Luffy didn't falter. He kept on searching for Ace. That was when he entered a forest and heard someone talking. It was Ace. He was with someone else and talking about the pirate fund and a ship. You guys also want to be pirates? Luffy beamed, gaining the attention of the 2 boys sitting on the tree branch. They climbed down the tree and glared at the boy. Ace, you come out here every day? Luffy grinned as he noticed Sabo. Sabo felt himself taking a step back. His back hit Ace's hands. He felt that Ace indeed was true about the gaze of this boy. The boy soon grinned at Sabo. Are you Ace's friend? Be my friend too? Luffy chirped. Shut it! Ace yelled as they tied the little boy to the tree. But Luffy kept on grinning at them. He found out about our secret. Ace glared at the boy. If we leave him alone, he'll tell someone. Let's kill him. Yeah, let's do it, Sabo said as he glared at the young boy. Luffy's eyes widened. Don't do it, I want to be your friend. Luffy yelled in panic. He didn't want to lose his new friends. Shut up, Ace glared. Stop spouting nonsense. Sabo placed a hand on Ace's and Luffy's mouths when he heard voices coming. Someone's coming, Sabo said. Quick, undo the rope. If we don't get out of here, they're gonna find our treasure, Ace said as he started undoing the ropes. They hid behind the bushes and saw some men who claimed themselves as Blue Gem pirates appear. They were finding Ace, cause he had stolen their treasure. Sabo scolded Ace for stealing treasure from pirates, to which Ace declared he didn't know them. That was when they noticed Luffy was not beside them and was in the grasp of the big pirate. "Let me go, you bastard," Luffy squirmed in the hold of Porkamy. "Help me, Ace." Ace and Sabo further hid in the bushes. "You know Ace?" Porkamy asked. "He is my friend," Luffy said. "Let me ask you something. Today Ace stole some of our money and ran. You know where it is?" Porkamy asked. Luffy gritted his teeth. "This is bad. They're gonna take all our treasure," Sabo yelled in a whispering tone to Ace. Ace glared at the kid and spoke. "That idiot better not say anything," Ace growled. Luffy averted his gaze from the pirate and twisted his mouth. I dunno. He's such a bad liar," everyone who witnessed it thought. Porkamy carried the boy away, threatening him to jog his memory. Luffy struggled in the pirate's grasp, trying to free himself. Inside the pirate's hideout, Luffy was bound to ropes and was being hammered by the pirate. But it did nothing to Luffy. Everyone saw Luffy spring up from his place and glared at the men. "So a devil fruit?" Porkamy frowned and pulled the boy's cheek, which stretched before snapping. "Bring my gloves," Porkamy ordered his men, and hanged the brat, and started using him as a punching bag. Blood spilled on the floor, and tears and snot littered Luffy's face. He could hear the winds have started howling, and he could feel a storm coming soon. His mother was raging in fury. He gritted his teeth and smirked at the bastards, knowing their end was soon. Porkamy ordered his men to look for Ace and Sabo and continued to beat the crap out of the smirking and glaring boy. Porkamy felt something was about to happen, but ignored the feeling as he continued his torture. On the other hand, Ace and Sabo moved their treasure from its previous position. It was evening and it was raining heavily. It felt as if a flood was bound to come and the storm would not stop soon. Sabo rushed to Ace and informed him that no one has come to their previous place and Luffy hasn't said anything. Luffy was beaten up badly by the pirate, but his glare never left the rampaging monster. Porkamy's underlings even tried to stop Porkamy, but to no avail. "Tell me," Porkamy yelled for the umpteenth time. Luffy just grinned. "You should care about your life," Luffy smirked. Porkamy felt rage envelop him as he picked up his swords. "Fine, then it's time to die." But before he can even lift his sword, Ace and Sabo come crashing into the wall and knocked Porkamy's sword. Luffy's face lit up. The winds have stopped howling and it seemed that the storm was returning. "Ace! Sabo!" Luffy yelled with tears in his eyes. Sabo freed him quickly and Luffy felt better. Porkamy grabbed Ace by his neck but was hit by Sabo with his pipe, making him lose his grip on Ace. Sabo caught Luffy and started running when he felt Ace standing there. Luffy struggled out of Sabo's grip. "Hey, wait," Luffy said. "Bastard, return my chain," Luffy yelled at Porkamy. Porkamy ignored the boy. Luffy ran in to stand beside Ace, and to get back his gift from Dad. He can't let them open it, never, he had promised his dad. "Let's get out of here, Ace," Sabo yelled, ignoring the boy. Ace took his fighting stance and faced Porkamy. "You go on ahead." "Are you an idiot?" Sabo yelled, desperately trying to get Ace out of there. "If I face a guy, I won't run away," Ace said as he tightened his hold on his pipe. Sabo tried to argue with Ace but to no hope. Sabo went to fight alongside Ace. Luffy stumbled on his feet and fell on the ground, and saw Ace and Sabo defeat the pirates. Sabo checked Porkamy's pocket and was shocked for a second to see the silver-colored chain with the brilliant dark red jewel hanging from it. Sabo had never seen something this beautiful, but he threw it to Luffy, who thanked him. As soon as they got out of the hut, a bolt of lightning thundered on the hut, destroying it and killing the people there. Luffy was carried by Sabo when he felt the drops of rain finally stop. He smiled. He was thankful to his new friends who helped him out of the gruesome situation. Luffy got out of the hold of Sabo as he saw the amounts of cuts on Sabo's face, and started running alongside them, albeit slowly. Sabo and Ace were shocked for a second as they saw the boy, who was literally covered in wounds, now running. Wasn't the kid hurt? They didn't question anything. Sabo bandaged Ace and then himself carefully. Then he took a look at Luffy, who was harboring wounds all over his body, but was acting all tough and thanking them for helping him out. "Aren't you hurt?" Sabo finally asked. Luffy started crying at that. "It hurt so much. I was so scared." Sabo chuckled softly as he grabbed the bandages and started patching him up. "Shut up," Ace shouted with shark teeth. "How long are you gonna cry? I hate weaklings and crybabies, you piss me off." Luffy bit his lips and stopped himself from crying. "Thanks for saving me." "Why didn't you say anything? Those guys don't care about killing women and children," Ace shouted once more. "If I told them, you wouldn't be my friend," Luffy sniffled. "Better than dying, wouldn't it? Why do you want to be my friend so badly?" Ace yelled. "After what I did to you, why are you still following me around?" "Because I don't have anyone else," Luffy shouted. "I can't go back to Makino and I hate bandits. If I don't follow you, I would be alone." Luffy rubbed his hands on his eyes, brushing the remaining tears. "It's worse to be alone than to be hurt." "Your parents?" Ace asked. Luffy pouted sadly as he looked at the ground. Mom is there. She listens to me. But I can't stay with her always. Dad visits once in a year only. He left me to Gramps so that I won't be in trouble cause of him. This is the only thing I have of him. Luffy took out the chain from his shirt and showed them. I don't have anybody else. If I'm around, would it be better? Ace asked, to which Luffy nodded. And if I were gone, would it be worse? Ace asked again, his mind wandering to the people who told him that his existence was a sin. Yeah, Luffy said. It doesn't matter who your dad is. Ace felt his breath hitch and he glared vehemently at the boy. Sabo's eyes widened. What do you mean? Ace glared at the boy, his hands tightening around his pipe. Luffy grinned widely as he fell back on the ground and stared at the stars. Roger was an amazing man. Ace felt himself about to beat the boy, but it was the first time he had heard someone speak positively about him. Shut up, Ace growled. Sabo watched the events with wide eyes. The boy was one heck of a mystery. Who the heck told you about him? Luffy grinned as he sat up. He rolled his eyes at Ace as if he was stating a fact. Mom, she knows everything? Ace glared venomously at Luffy. As much as he knew, and Garp had told him, it was only him and Dayton and the bandits who knew about his existence and no one else. Who the heck is your mom? Ace growled. Sabo placed a hand on Ace's shoulder, trying to calm down the boy. Ace glared back at Sabo. Do you want to meet her? Luffy sprang up from his position and bounced to Ace and Sabo. Come on, let's go. I have not met her for a long time. Ace and Sabo walked reluctantly behind the jumping boy. If glares can kill people, then Sabo was sure that Luffy would be dead until now. But he was amazed that even when Ace was glaring so hard, Luffy didn't falter. He didn't duck his head to his knees and beg for forgiveness. He didn't cower in fear. And how the hell did his mom know a top secret? But something about the kid felt different. He was born as a noble, and yet, he knew no clothes, nothing, can make a person glow. The way Luffy carried a glow with him, which was clearly visible in the dark night, and the way he could even run with those freaking wounds was a mystery to him. Yeah, Ace could do that stupid thing, cause that's Ace and he is stubborn. But this little kid looked like a crybaby, so there's no way that he can even walk with those wounds, but here he was. When they reached the end of the forest and entered a beach, they frowned, not understanding. Luffy ran to the waters and Ace felt himself trying to rescue the boy. He knew he was a devil fruit user and they sink in the waters. But he could care less. Moreover, he was filled with rage that moment. Luffy ran to the waters and was soon cuddled by it, leaving Ace questioning if he was really a devil fruit user. Luffy called them near and Ace walked with a frown and glare on his face, while Sabo was completely confused. Mom. Luffy pointed to the ocean. Ace felt that Luffy was joking and Sabo felt more confused. What the hell are you even saying? Ace growled. Luffy pouted and said clearly this time. He could hear his mom snicker. My mom is the ocean. She knows everything. Ace and Sabo felt their eyes widening at that. They couldn't believe it. Luffy grinned and looked at Ace and Sabo. Mama says thank you for helping me, Luffy chirped. Ace and Sabo looked at each other. A wave suddenly enclosed upon them. They felt their aches in the bodies vanish and their wounds and cuts which they acquired from fighting vanish without a trace. That was enough proof required to know if the kid was lying or not. Say, Luffy, Sabo asked, his eyes still on the ocean. It now made sense why Luffy was able to swim. Aren't you a devil fruit user? Luffy pouted at that and mumbled. I don't like the name devil fruit at all. Then he nodded. What is your fruit's name? Sabo asked. It's Hito Hito no Mi. Model Nika. Luffy chirped but soon realized what he had done. He clamped his hands on his mouth to avoid speaking. He did trust his new friends, but Grandpa would scold him if he knew that he had spilled his secrets in one day. Ace and Sabo looked questioningly at Luffy. I wasn't supposed to say that. Forget that, okay? Luffy started to walk towards the hideout. Ace and Sabo just shrugged it off. On the way, they realized that Blue Jam will hunt them more now and Sabo basically lives in the Grey Terminal, so it will be way too dangerous for him to sortie there. Ace and Luffy suggested him to stay with them in Dayton's hideout. After getting chased out of Grey Terminal, Ace's friend Sabo came to live with them. Dayton had accepted the boy with not much difficulty. Ace, Sabo, and Luffy. These boys fought the beasts in the mountains and the jungles, the punks from town, the villains of the dump, and the pirates in the cove, day and night, until their names were known even in the central city of the kingdom. But during one dine and dash event, Sabo was caught by his father. They ran out of the high town and Ace and Luffy confronted Sabo and asked him to spill out who the man was. Sabo told them that his biological father and mother were alive and that he was a noble. Luffy and Ace picked their noses in the reaction and didn't care if he was noble or not. Then Sabo told them how he was treated as an object by his parents, how his wishes were uneggelsted and crumbled on. He told them how they forced him to behave and even when something wrong happened, they wouldn't care for him much. So, he had escaped from the cage, the noble's house. Ace, Luffy, Sabo said fondly, we have to make it out to sea someday. We'll leave this country behind and gain our freedom. Sabo balled his fists. determination screaming from his body language. I want to see the world in all its glory and write a book about all the things I find. If it's the sailing I'm studying for, then I don't care how hard I have to work. We've got to get stronger and become real pirates. Ace was standing near the cliff, smiled and laughed. I don't need you to tell me that. I'm gonna become a pirate, beat every last person who stands in my way, and earn myself the kind of glory that dreams are made of. Only then will my life have been worth living. I don't care if the whole world refuses to accept me. They can hate me all they like. I'll become a great pirate and prove I'm better than them all. I won't run from anybody. I'll never lose. I don't care if they end up terrified of me. I'm gonna make sure the whole world knows my name. Luffy grinned and laughed. All right, well, then. He ran to the side of the cliff, his hands high up in the air, and sun kissed his face as he declared his dream for the world to hear. I'm gonna. The waves supported him. The breeze ruffled his hair by knocking his hat back. The sun shone on him, blessing him to his fullest, and a drop of water kissed him on the forehead, his mother kissing him as he grinned brighter than the sun. Meanwhile, Ace and Sabo stood there shaken and burst out laughing. But they believed in him, that only he can pull off the impossible, if anyone could. But they didn't spell it out loud. One thing that was clear was that if anyone dared to laugh on their baby brother's dream, he or she won't be spared. Soon they started arguing about who will the captain, to which each one declared themselves as captain. They soon became brothers too. They sparred together, which Luffy always lost, getting hit by his rubbery limbs, and Ace and Sabo mostly tied. They were in the Hightown today and Ace was inside a bar. He saw some drunkards talking about Roger. He couldn't help but step forward and ask the question, which always lingers in his mind. What if Roger had a son? Ace asked, his hands already fiddling around his pipe and a scowl on his face. He's done this multiple times. Then why does he still keep on doing this? Regardless of any answers from himself, he waited for the response of the drunkards. If Roger had a kid, a man repeated as he looked at Ace, then we'd kill him right away. How about we count how many people in the world hate Roger, and stab him with that number of needles? Another man said. Ace felt rage boiling through his blood, but he stood there waiting for the men to complete their trashing. Burn him at the stake, another man said, everyone in the world. A bone-cracking sound was heard, followed by a, shut up, the voice growled throughout the bar, stopping everyone from laughing. Ace turned. He knew that voice. He saw Luffy standing near the door, his hands gripping the walls of the bar, and it was cracking. Ace couldn't believe what he was seeing. Shut the hell up, Luffy growled again. His eyes were hidden due to the courtesy of his hat. He slowly lifted his head. It was Ace's turn to flinch. Ace had never seen Luffy angry. Those eyes shouldn't be displayed on a kid as young as him. Those eyes promised death if Luffy stepped forward or moved an inch. The crumbling wall he had embedded his fist in started to crack more, mirroring the kid's anger. He failed to notice how some men fell from their chairs and landed on their faces on the ground. Luffy glared at the people. He freaking hated these kinds of people. He hated how they blamed one's parents' deed on their offsprings. He hated it. He understood now why Ace hated his father and why he questioned his own existence. These assholes just know to spout nonsense. They are the worst kind of S in the world, for talking cruelly about an innocent child. He was only passing by the bar when he felt Ace inside and he was sad. He barged in without wasting a moment and he heard Ace questioning the men about Roger's kid. He heard those insolent words the men spoke. They were, for him, complete lies. The world should know that Roger was a great man. They should not call him a demon. But most of it all, why did the heck Ace needs to be dragged into it? Why the hell should Ace bear for the hypothetical crimes of his dad? What has Roger's son ever done to deserve all those hell? Luffy growled once again. His fists ground on the wall, a crater already forming, giving the wall a big hole. Luffy, Ace said. He felt himself biting his lower lip. Roger's kid deserves everything, one man said, followed by another. Luffy failed to control his anger. His fists landed harshly on the wall behind him, and the wall was completely demolished from existence. He glared at the men hard and the men soon fell on their knees in front of Ace. With bar was standing except Ace and Luffy. Some were lying on the floor almost lifeless and the rest were already on their knees, struggling. Apologize, Luffy growled. The men felt themselves being choked by some invisible power. Ace turned back to see the men, who had answered him, on their knees holding their necks and desperately trying to breathe. He felt an invisible power surrounding the area. It was powerful and could choke to death. He felt himself feeling dizzy. He gulped. Was this Luffy who was doing it? How was he capable of that? I am so. The men choked out. Luffy took a heavy breath and saw around the bar. No one now said anything. Sabo, who was watching this, felt the immediate need to get his brothers out of the situation. He ran into the bar and picked up Luffy, who instantly calmed in his brother's hands and rushed Ace out of the bar. They ran to the cliff. After catching their breath, Ace looked at Luffy. What did you do? Ace asked. Luffy huffed and crossed his arms over his chest. He was hanging upside down from a branch of the tree. He was saying mean words about Ace. But that's okay, Ace was cut off by Sabo's and Luffy's eyes narrowing at him. How could that be okay? Sabo asked and glared at Ace. Sorry Ace, but you should know that even if your dad is you know what, you shouldn't be blamed for his deeds. Yeah, Sabo is right, Luffy said happily. Ace should not hear those people anymore. Promises, Ace, you won't go around asking people anymore, Sabo asked seriously. He didn't want his brother to hear those mean words. He didn't want him to hate himself. He had wanted to tell him this always, but whenever he would pick up the topic, Ace would shut him up with a glare. But after Luffy joined them, things visibly changed. Ace's shoulder had relaxed a bit from before. He would even give smiles to them. Ace crossed his arms over his chest and averted his gaze, refusing to meet the eyes of his brothers. He did feel warm to know that they loved him so much to take his sides. But a part of him just yelled that what everybody said was true and he can't blame them. His mind went to the time when he had asked Garp whether he should have been born and his gramps had told him to keep on living and he'll find out. He felt tears prick in his eyes when Luffy suddenly hugged him. Ace thinks too much, Luffy said in a low voice, before wrapping his limbs many times at Ace's chest. Ace should be born. Ace should live. Ace should stay with us. Ace is the best. Luffy said all that in Ace's ears, each word holding pure love behind it. Ace bit his upper lip and nodded at Luffy and Sabo. If Sabo saw his glassy eyes, he didn't say anything, but he soon was pulled into the hug by Luffy. Ace felt like the luckiest one in the world to have such loving brothers. He had his brothers out in this world, who exist to keep him alive. Ace, Sabo, and Luffy were running around in the forest when they heard the wind rustling. Luffy's face gained a bright smile, making Ace and Sabo halt in their paths. Out of one of the trees, a man came in front. The man smiled at Luffy and the brothers instantly felt a protective urge and stood in front of their little brother, to protect him. But Luffy was not someone who could be halted, he was a force of nature. He was vibrating in his place and jumping. Papa! Luffy shouted and made his way toward the hooded figure. Ace and Sabo titled their heads in confusion and saw their little brother being lifted from the ground and in the arms of the man. They couldn't see his face clearly. I missed you, Luffy chirped, like his usual self. Then he started babbling all about how he met Ace and Sabo and how they were brothers now. They could see the man smiling and approaching them. Thank you for taking care of my son, the man said as he bowed a little with Luffy in his arms. The man's hood came down and Sabo felt like he was dreaming. His eyes widened. D-Dragon? He didn't even think that he had uttered those words. Dragon wore an amused expression on his face. Yes. Dragon gave a small smile and placed Luffy on the ground, with his brothers. He put his hands inside his pockets searching for something. Do you know him, Sabo? Ace asked, looking not at all interested in the man and more interested in keeping an eye on Luffy who was jumping around and showing the beetles which he had caught a few minutes ago to his dad. And his dad was paying his full attention to the energetic kid. Sabo nodded his head. He is Dragon the Revolutionary. The world government considers him the most wanted man in the world. The Revolutionary Army's main objective is to fight against the world government's rule over the world. Dragon raised an eyebrow at that. This kid seemed knowledgeable yet with a noble attire. What do you think about nobles? Dragon asked, his curiosity getting the best of him. Sabo grinned maliciously and looked at Dragon straight in his eyes. His eyes held a mischievous twinkle which made Dragon smile. Nobles are worthless as bags. They use their status and position to escape from their crimes, which is unacceptable. Dragon grinned at that. He already likes the kid. Dragon brought his hands back from his pockets and placed the bag of candies and sweets in front of the three kids. Luffy directly attacked them, making Dragon chuckle. Lu, you need to share it with your brothers. Dragon grinned and took out some picture books about pirates and handed them to Luffy, who was now visibly thinking about what he should do first. Eat sweets or read stories about pirates. Who was he kidding? He started doing both together. Ace and Sabo were now eating the sweets with Luffy. He could see the happiness radiating from them. Ace looked a little out of place, but in the face of food and sweets, he forgot everything and only focused on the candies in front of him. They were delicious. Sabo grinned sheepishly after they ate everything and looked at Dragon and gave a little bow, making Ace copy him. Thank you for sharing the sweets with us. Dragon chuckled lightly. He could see the hot-headed kid, getting red on his face. He liked his son's brothers already. The entire week that he spent with the trio was amazing. He saw them using their strength to fight the beasts of Mount Kalubu. He saw them fighting the thugs and stealing their treasures. The brothers exactly fit together. They fought together. He even met Dayton and stayed at the stuffed house, but it was all fun. He showed some of his attacks to them, and they looked amazed. Sabo even asked him straightforward that he wanted to learn the Dragon Claw attack, which was followed by Ace's small but pure delight. From the looks of it, he also wanted to learn that but didn't know how to ask. The more he got to know about the brothers, the more he felt relaxed. He could see their protectiveness for his son. He could see them ensuring him that his son was safe with them. He was visibly lightened up. He felt good to know that his son finally made friends and won't be lonely anymore. He was shocked when he didn't see his son cry when he was leaving him again. He felt a pang of hurt or envy, but it disappeared when he saw his son smiling brightly and saw the other two waving at him. The brothers fought together, Sabo and Ace always protecting their weak brother, if anyone dared to hurt him. They bathed together creating a ruckus, they fought for food, not allowing the bandits to lay their hands. Luffy once even tried to eat Dayton, whose hair had a slice of meat stuck to it. They even dirtied the clean room, destroying the stove which was in the middle of the room. They disrupted Dayton's beautiful dreams by Luffy falling on top of her, followed by Ace and Sabo. Dayton's health was taking a toll on her, her eye bags a clear sign of it. She was complaining about the boys and thinking about something to kick the brats off her house. When she felt the footsteps, she thought it was definitely Garp. She bowed on the ground, begging for forgiveness, but it was Mayor Wood, Slap and Makino. Luffy rushed out to meet Makino and hugged her. Makino gave the brothers clothes and adjusted the clothes for Ace and Sabo. Ace's face was completely red when he was standing in front of Makino. Luffy and Sabo took it as a thing to joke about in the future. That night was the most amazing for Ace and Sabo and the bandits. They ate delicious foods like humans. They were discussing getting the best cook in their pirate ship when the bandits froze. They saw two shining eyes behind them, standing at the door. It was none other than Garp, who gave the three brothers fist of love with Dayton. "Don't dare to hit our little brother." Ace and the new kid stood in front of Luffy hiding him. Garp laughed again. "Who are you?" Garp asked the blonde kid. "Sabo, shitty old man," he said with eyes glaring daggers at him like that of Ace. Garp pouted at that. "Don't call me old man, call me grandpa, brat." He looked at the shocked expression of the kid and laughed it off and picked the trio up for training. He threw them into the jungle and beat them in the name of training. Right now, they were laying on the ground, beaten up. Garp was there collecting firewood. Luffy had apparently fallen asleep. Garp set up a campfire. He sat in front of Ace and Sabo and started speaking. "I want you both to protect Luffy," Garp said, his eyes landing on the boys. Ace frowned at that and Sabo raised his eyebrows. "We won't let anything happen to him, old man," Ace said, his arms crossed on his chest and faint reddish blush carving up on his face. "You don't have to tell us, shitty Gramps," Sabo nodded in agreement. I know, Garp grinned but soon his face changed into serious, but he is not normal like others. "We already know who his mom is," Sabo said. Garp nodded. "About his father?" Garp asked with raised eyebrows. Ace and Sabo both nodded their heads. "He is very light-lipped and says things that will definitely lead to his hunt," Garp sighed. Ace raised an eyebrow at this. "What do you mean he will be hunted?" Garp frowned. "I believe that he had already said the name of his devil fruit." He saw them nodding and Sabo informed him. "If any of the world government agents heard the word Nika and understood what he is, he will be killed in an instant, regardless of who his father is," Garp said, and he could see the horror in the eyes of the boys. "What do you mean by Nika?" Sabo further asked. Luffy groggily opened his eyes and spoke. "Did someone call me?" Garp frowned at that. "Luffy, your name is Luffy, not that," he said with anger. Luffy, who sat up now, glared at Garp before frowning. "But why do I need to hide my real name?" he asked and crossed his arms on his chest. "I don't understand at all." "Your real name is Nika?" Ace asked, to which Luffy nodded happily. Garp scratched his head in worry. "Fine," Garp said. "Listen to me." Luffy looked at Garp and the others. "Even did they ever come to know about your real name, and if by any chance the world government came to know about your existence, they will kill you in spot." "Why will they kill me? 'Cause of my name?" Luffy frowned but soon burst out laughing. "And do you think?" Luffy's eyes flickered to golden. "They can kill me?" Luffy started laughing hard, his one hand on his stomach and the other on his eyes. The last part of the voice didn't seem like Luffy, but yet, it did. The voice held authority, power, and above all, a peal of carefree laughter. It was as if a sleeping part of Luffy had just spoken. Ace and Sabo chose to remain quiet as they saw their grandpa frown at that and what he saw. "Listen, Luffy, I told you to not use that name, then I have a freaking reason." Garp landed a fist of love on Luffy's head. "OWWW. Oh, that hurts," Luffy glared. "If you can't handle this, then how the heck will you fight them?" Garp yelled. Luffy seemed to consider that, but soon a grin appeared on his face. "Fine," he grinned brightly. "When I will become strong, I will use my real name." Luffy pumped his fists in the air. Garp sighed and agreed. He waited for Luffy to fall asleep again, which didn't take long. "Why will they want to kill him 'cause of the name?" Ace frowned. There was an island called Ohara, which was wiped off the surface of the map 10 years. The island was notable for the Tree of Knowledge, a gigantic 5,000-year-old tree, which served as a library and a hub for archaeologists from around the world. Garp's eyes fell on the fire. The scholars of the island unveiled the true history of the 100 years gap, known as Void Century, and when the world government came to know about it, Garp gritted his teeth. They erased the whole island from the map of the world. Ace's and Sabo's eyes widened in horror. They couldn't believe that knowing the past could lead to such outrageous punishments. "I only know one thing." Garp locked his eyes with the two kids. "That name goes way back in the Void Century." That name can lead the world government to destroy anything in their path to remove it forever.
So, that is the only reason why our brother will be hunted. Sabo frowned.
Garp shook his head. He knew he was giving too much information to them, but he knew that they will give their lives for each other and Luffy needed someone who would keep him on watch. He is the son of the sea and the things that I have seen in him. It all points to one direction. Garp looked at Ace and Sabo. He is a reincarnation of the previous wielder of that name. No way. Ace said, disbelieving the words. If it's true, then it doesn't seem like he knows that completely, or he doesn't have enough knowledge of his previous life. Sabo said as he glanced at Luffy. Garp nodded. He might have some but not all. Garp completed. Ace and Sabo understood the grave danger their brother was in. But I do believe, as the days pass, his knowledge and conscience will wake up. Don't worry, we will keep an eye on him, Sabo said and Ace nodded in agreement. Garp felt a worry lift his chest. He patted their backs and finally allowed them to rest. He was staring at the stars. His mind leads to many questions with no possible answers. Why did the world government so desperately want to hide the truth of the Void Century? Why was the name a danger? He had overheard Sengoku talking about shipping a devil fruit, namely Gomu Gomu no Mi, under high protection. The fruit was guarded by CP0 agents. But the fruit was stolen by Red Hair and was eaten by Luffy, who claimed it as if it was a part of his body. He did understand why the world government hid the name of the devil fruit by Gomu Gomu no Mi. But why was that even required? The first time when he heard Luffy call himself Nika, his mind landed him in a cell, where he was meeting Roger. After he had met him and was passing by, he heard someone ask, Nika. To save them, to free them, to liberate them. He had asked them who that guy is, though, he had thought he was wishing that a friend of his, whose name is Nika, will save him. But when he had asked, the prisoner paled. He refused to speak a word. Garp had shrugged it off, but the name had lingered in his mind. The next time when he was about to lead his best friend to his execution, he found the cell, which the prisoner had occupied, empty. When he asked them about it to the guards, they said he was killed for naming someone. Roger had asked about the name, to which one guard had spilled it off, while the other guard had visibly paled, fearing for his life. Garp didn't understand. But he saw the pity in the face of his best friend. When asked, he said, the name is someone who will change the era if born again. Someone who will bring real justice to the world and whom the top dogs fear, who would go to any extent to remove the name from history itself, as they had done centuries ago. They stuck a note on the wall of Dayton's hideout, stating they were moving out. They didn't want to go through the shitty Grabs training. Those hurt. They hid under a tree that day. It was raining. They were sleeping, in the company of each other, happy to be together. When Dayton first read the note, she ignored it. She knew kids were monsters and they could fend for themselves. But the fear of Garp made her order the bandits to search the boys. The bandits searched desperately everywhere, facing wild beasts in their path, but they weren't scarier than Garp. Then, it was Dagra and Magra who found the boys after several days in a treehouse, enjoying the stormy weather. The kids played together, did pillow fights, pretended to be pirates and enjoyed each day. Dayton was informed by the bandits where the brats were. She was relieved that they were alive, not that she will yell it loud. That night she secretly went to check them on. She climbed the tree and inside the treehouse where the three brothers sleeping soundly. Her lips curved up in a smile and eyes shined up as she went inside to fix the blanket of the smaller one, whose blanket was thrown across the room and was using Ace as his heater. But as soon as Dayton stepped foot inside the house, unknown to her knowledge, the trap was set on. The gears turned. The stone came down slowly. A ball came rolling out of a box. A candle lit off the thin thread and finally a hammer came striking into Dayton's stomach, throwing her out of the treehouse. Dayton fell on the ground with a thud sound, waking Sabo and Ace, who considered it as a glitch. She swore that she would not worry about the kids anymore. One day. Give Sabo back, Luffy shouted, squirming in the grasp of the pirate who was holding him. Blue Jam. The guards who were behind the pirate and the noble collapsed on the ground.
Give him back. Try speaking sense, urchins, the noble pointed at Ace and Luffy who were lying on the ground. Sabo is my own flesh and blood. It is the duty of every child to live according to the wishes of the parents who brought him into the world. How dare you urchins convince my Sabo to run away from home? Filthy pieces of trash, is it my fortune you are after?
The hell did you say? Ace got out of the grasp of the pirate who was holding him and attacked the man. But he got kicked off and was pinned to the ground all again. His blood fell on the noble, who used his handkerchief to wipe it and told the pirates to be careful to not spill blood on him. Luffy was growling in anger. The sky was covered with dark clouds and it soon began raining. The cackling of thunder was not far from their ears.
If you wanna live, leave now. Luffy gritted his teeth in warning. He would not spare these rascals who dared to hurt his brothers. The pirates knelt down and the noble was close to falling on his knees. Ace's and Sabo's eyes widened. They knew what it meant. The sudden change in the weather, the howling winds and the harsh rain drops completely pointed towards their suspicion. Sabo clearly saw how Luffy's eyes were golden now, not flickering even, as he had seen once.
Luffy, no, Sabo shook his head. He can't let Luffy show his powers in front of these rascals. No way, he is going to endanger his little brother's life. Stop this. Sabo turned to his father. Leave them alone. I'll live my life however you want, just please, leave them alone. Sabo begged his father. He will give himself up, if it means they will be fine. He will do anything, just to ensure their safety, especially Luffy. Sabo, Luffy cried, what the hell? Sabo didn't respond, as he started walking in the rain with his dad with tears in his eyes. He needed to take the pirates out of here. He didn't want them to notice the change in Iris, which Luffy was having right now. He just can't. Oi, Ace yelled. Where are you going? There can be other option. Please don't leave Sabo. Ace pleaded. Get away from those heads. We'll be fine. You hear? We're all going to become free men, aren't we? Are you going to let it end here? Sabo, Luffy cried, tears flowing from his eyes. Sabo hated seeing Luffy cry. He hated the carefree, easygoing, smiling kid cry, but he couldn't do anything. He knew if he wanted he could be safe with his brothers, but in the cost of giving up Luffy's identity. No way he was going to let that happen, and no way he would stick up with those nobles. He will escape. He wishes Luffy to read him, as he always does, so he turned back once, and gave a small faint smile. He saw Luffy's eyes widen and him nodding. Message delivered. The Blue Gem pirates tied Ace and Luffy and brought them in their hideout and told how being born a noble was a lucky thing. He even told them that Sabo looked down on the boat on the inside. To which he was met by Luffy's glare and Ace's and Luffy's shouting that he isn't that kind of guy, that they're brothers, and Sabo's promise that he will return. Ace felt himself relaxing at those words. Blue Gem laughed and warned them to not go after him, and if they dare, then he will kill them. As if you can, Luffy scoffed. Blue Gem ignored the warning and asked the boys to forget about what had happened and help him to carry some boxes to the places marked as X. Luffy straight up denied helping them in any matter. He didn't like it and it smelled too fishy. Ace also denied to help. Do you want me to kill Sabo? Blue Gem threateningly asked the kids. Ace glared at him. Luffy scoffed, if you dare to point your weapons on my brothers. Luffy gave a cocky grin, then prepared to die. Luffy gritted his teeth and glared at the pirate. I'll tear you apart. Shut up, squirt, Blue Gem said. He felt his soul leaving his body. He felt as if he was being ripped apart from within. Ace applied pressure on the ropes and the ropes finally came undone. He stood in front of Luffy, who was squirming his way out of the rope now. What did you say, bastard? Ace jumped in the way with a war cry, but without his pipe, he was thrown at the corner of the room, hitting his head on the wall. Luffy saw this and stood in between them. They failed to notice the sweat drops culminating on the pirates. They failed to hear the loud thunder, which promised to tear apart any ravenous soul who dared to hurt the boys. Ace didn't take too long to recoil to his feet. They found their pipes laying at the corner of the room and attacked Blue Gem together. Blue Gem lost his footing and was about to hit Ace and Luffy when he felt a pressure choking him. Standing just in front of him and pointing a sword at his heart. The pirates who were surrounding the area were now already sprawled on the ground, unable to move a muscle. They took this as a chance to escape from Blue Gem and his crew. Whatever they wanted from them, they didn't want to do it. So, they skipped off from Great Terminal and went to Forest. They returned to their treehouse. It was about to be dark soon, so they hunted food for themselves and ate. They were lying on their blanket in their treehouse. Do you think Sabo's alright? Luffy asked, concerned about his other brother. Shut up and get some sleep, he is strong, he will manage it out, Ace said as he held Luffy closer to give the latter some warmth. Luffy snuggled closer to Ace's chest. He couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible is about to happen. On the other hand, Sabo was suffering from his parents' tortures, their ramblings to confess that Ace and Luffy had committed the crimes and he was innocent. But Sabo refused it. He denied it. He couldn't bring himself to blame them. Never. They were his brothers. In Sabo's house, he met his so-called brother, Stelly, who was a year older than Luffy. He heard from him about the fire which was about to take place the next day. It would burn the whole Great Terminal with its people, their homes, and their livelihoods. Sabo escaped from the window that night. He heard the guards talking about the fire. The next morning, everything felt normal, with his private tutor arriving. He felt as if the others didn't, which was about to take place. Sabo roamed around the street asking people about the fire at the trash heap, and the nobles damn agreed that they knew. They were acting as if it was freaking normal. The whole district knew about the fire and yet they just go on with their lives. He ran and ran to find some way to escape the filthy district, which was suffocating him. On the other side, Ace and Luffy were going through Great Terminal when they again encountered Blue Gem and his crew. Blue Gem was glaring daggers at the two boys. Luffy didn't want to deal with them, not right now, when his mind was screaming for him to pay attention. But to what should he pay attention? Some memories did uproot in his mind, but they were too foggy for him to remember. It was not time yet. He was holding his head when he saw Ace fighting the pirates. He gritted his teeth at the pirates. He soon realized that he was under the clutch of a random pirate. "Aren't you that stubborn, trash?" Luffy said and snapped his fingers, making the pirate holding him drop on the ground. Luffy's eyes were golden, red and white as glared at Blue Jam. Ace had already defeated the fodders, so he caught on Luffy, who fell in Ace's secure hands. "Didn't you learn your lesson yet?" Ace scoffed at Blue Jam and stood in front of Luffy. Blue Jam smirked. "I had just let my guard down and you two rascals have took the opportunity." Blue Jam acted more gently as he shoved his hands inside his pocket, trying to act like a noble, which he was offered to be. "I forgive you, after all I'm going to be noble from tomorrow." Ace and Luffy scoffed at that. "The trash heap will burn to the ground tonight." Blue Jam smirked as he towered above the boys, whose eyes were wide. Ace's fists were balled and Luffy's grip tightened on his pipe. "Why the hell would you want to do that?" Ace growled. "This is bad. We've got to tell the guys from the trash heap." Luffy shouted at Ace, who nodded instantly. Blue Jam pirates surrounded the boys from every angle, preventing their escape. Ace and Luffy ran away from the filthy pirates at their chance. The pirates were fools to leave them behind with tied ropes, which Ace and Luffy were experts in escaping from. The trick was taught by Dragon and they were thankful for it. The brothers tried informing as many people as possible, but no one believed them. They were trying their best to make people listen to them, but everyone ignored them. Some even asked if they were trying to steal their treasure. The clouds above their head were getting darker and darker. It would rain any moment. The king of the Goa kingdom cursed at the clouds which towered over the whole island. If it would rain, then they would be in a deep problem. The fire had already started. He could see the gigantic flames that were rising from the walls, and slowly, the rain started dripping from the sky. It was light but soon became heavy, overpowered by thunder and wind, which were doing their work perfectly in spreading the fire, even if the rain was doing its best to remove the fire. "The fire will burn the trash heap tonight." The king relaxed and went off to bed, not knowing what he had done. At the dead of the night, the fire started, destroying the people's houses. They tried to cross the massive gate, but were shot down. They started going the other side, hoping to escape with their lives. The path to the coast was blocked. The path to the forest was set ablaze. The path to the high town was guarded and closed. So, where were they meant to go? There was nowhere to run. The people who were warned by the two brothers now regretted not hearing them. They cursed themselves. Luffy and Ace made their way out of the inferno and were in the middle of the Grey Terminal. On the other hand, Blue Jam and his crew were denied entry into the high town, betrayed by the king to the promise to make them nobles, and their damn ship was even destroyed. In the Grey Terminal, children were crying, holding their parents, and people were running anywhere where there was no fire, and Ace and Luffy were now surrounded by the Blue Jam pirates. Sabo was standing in front of the gates, trying to get through them, but he was beat badly and thrown into an alley. Dragon, who was passing through the place, saw Sabo and immediately recognized him. He gritted his teeth. He likes the kid and he is his son's brother, meaning he is family. Sabo looked up at Dragon and clutched the man's coat and told him about the fire and who were behind it, the royals and the nobles. "Luffy and Ace, I'm worried about them." Sabo looked at Dragon. "There's something in this district that stinks worse than the trash heap ever did. The people of this district are rotten on the inside," Sabo told Dragon, who was carrying him. "If I stay here, I'll never be free. I'm ashamed to have been born a noble," Sabo cried. Tears streamed down from his face. "See what you have driven this innocent child to say, Kingdom of Goa," Dragon thought. He used his devil fruit and easily crossed the walls without getting noticed. They were face to face with the fire. "I understand, I too was born here in this country, but I still do not have the power to change the ways of the world," Dragon said as he held the boy and examined his wounds. He was debating if he should go in the fire with Sabo, but he couldn't see a choice. He couldn't leave him there all alone. He saw Sabo fading in the darkness. He saw him collapse in his arms. Dragon tucked him carefully in his cloak and made a way for the people of the Grey Terminal to escape from the fire and began his search for the two boys. He knew with Luffy's and Ace's habit of being trouble magnets. They were here, and that was made sure when he felt his Lu's and Ace's Conqueror's kings. He was impressed that both the kids have the king's will. "Who gave you permission to run, you filthy brats?" Blue Jam sneered. Luffy and Ace gritted their teeth. They tried to escape, but the pirates surrounded them. The fire surrounded them, with the howling wind, which was making the fire lick them painfully. Their best option was to escape Blue Jam, right now. But how was the question? Blue Jam was about to ask about the brat's treasure when his eyes caught the flicker of a shiny thing. He squinted his eyes and they landed on the chain smallest the brat wore. His eyes sparkled at the Straw Hat Boy, who was wearing a silver-colored chain with a deep red-colored pearl. Blue Jam's eyes widened at that. How the hell this kid got hold of such a pretty jewel? It should be mine, Blue Jam thought. It was one of the prettiest jewels he had ever seen. After all, he was a pirate, and looting treasure was what he loved, even at the cost of his own life. These jewels cannot belong to East Blue. They can only belong to the Grand Line. Who are these kids? He could bet that even the King of Goa would not have such jewels within his grasp. Where do you brats got that precious jewel? Blue Jam licked his lips greedily. It was hanging outside of Luffy's t-shirt, due to running and thrashing. Ace hated how the pirate's greedy eyes lurked on his brother's treasure. He hated how they were so close to them. The fire was increasing and the assholes cared about treasures in their last moments. He hated it. Such extravagant jewel can be found in Grand Line only. Blue Jam's eyes darkened at the kids. Who are you? Blue Jam uttered the word. Captain, isn't he the kid who keeps on asking? The pirate, who was speaking with fingers pointed at Ace, got a kick to his mouth. Ace can't wait to hear the end of their sentence. No way. The more they knew, the more danger he will bring to his brothers. He can't do that. He is the older brother and he is supposed to protect them. Piss off, Ace shouted. I will kill you, fuckface. Ace even forgot that he was spitting slang in each of his sentences before Luffy. He was supposed to be a good brother. A part of him was saying him to mind his words, but another part of him was saying to shut the hell out of the pirates. Luffy understood the situation they were in. He felt the negativity coming from the pirates. They were insane and had already lost their minds. And they did hurt them, so they deserved every inch of their fury. They had helped the noble to take Sabo from them. They had left many people to burn in the trash heap alive. They have taken away those people's treasures and homes. Ace launched at Blue Jam, kicking and punching him. Luffy was handling the rest of the pirates, pushing them into the fire to meet their dead ends. But the place gave little to no space for them to fight. He stood behind Ace to protect his back, like Ace was doing with him. They fought together, protecting each other's backs. Blue Jam was sprouting nonsense about wanting the treasure and was trying his best to get near Luffy. But Ace was not about to give up. He would protect his brother even if it means he needs to die. He will protect Sabo and Luffy with his life, if possible. But Blue Jam refused to leave him alone. He started babbling about how he will get rich with his brother's treasure and take his revenge on the nobles. He even told that Sabo was just like them, to which he received growls from Ace. Luffy bit the hands of the pirate who was capturing him, but got attacked by a sword, breaking his pipe, and creating a nasty wound on his forehead. Luffy, Ace shouted. I'll kill you, die, bastard, the pirate said as he raised his sword high up in the air. Don't you dare touch Luffy, Ace yelled, as he kicked Blue Jam aside and ran to Luffy's side. He failed to notice some pirates kissing the ground and some hitting the fire. His eyes were focused only on Luffy. His brother was holding his wound and squirming on the ground, crying in pain. The lightning crackled nearby and the raging of the waves was heard by everyone. Luffy saw Ace standing beside him. He felt relief wash over him. His brother was strong. He will handle the rest. But he can't give up. He tried to stand up on his feet, taking deep breaths. The rainwater stung his wounds, and they burned, but the wound was closing, albeit very, very slowly. He gritted his teeth. Luffy saw Blue Jam's greedy eyes lying on Ace. He couldn't forgive these pirates. What did you just do, little urchin? Blue Jam tried to kick Ace but miserably failed. He took out his gun from his pocket and pointed it at him. Ace didn't pale. He wasn't afraid of death. But the thought of leaving Luffy all alone in this fire scared him. Luffy saw how close the gun laid to Ace's head. He couldn't allow anyone to point their gun at his brother. He will erase them from the whole universe if they dared to try it. Stop! Luffy shouted. Blue Jam felt himself losing his balance, and that was when an axe clanked with his sword. Give it up already, you stinking sea monsters. A curly orange-haired woman holding an axe had attacked him. Get your hands off our Ace. Luffy struggled to get up to Ace. His one eye closed, due to blood that seeped through his wound. Dogra tried to hold him down and check his injuries, but Luffy wanted his brother. Both of his brothers. Dogra asked about the whereabouts of Sabo, to which Ace replied he was safe while Luffy cried. A gust of wind made its way to the fire, clearing the fire which surrounded them. Luffy turned from Dogra's grip to look around. He saw the hooded figure. He saw his dad, standing there above Blue Jam. He can feel the fury coming from his dad. He saw his dad kick the pirate on the ground. Dragon turned around and winced. He saw Luffy and Ace covered in dirt and wounds. He freaking saw the blood dripping from Luffy's head. His gaze shifted to Dayton, who stopped in her tracks and looked at him with a questioning gaze. Blue Jam hated the fat woman and the hooded figure who stood there in front of him. He felt himself losing his balance, but he could care less. All he could think about was the treasure, which was about to his. Dayton and Dragon saw the blood coming from the pirate. They saw how he was wounded but was on his 2 feet only due to the madness in his eyes. How dare the rascal hurt their boys? That was the only fuming thought in their heads. Dragon passed Sabo to Ace, who took him in his arms and checked his wounds. Sabo was bleeding. Luffy neared his brothers getting out of Dogra. He was crying but was happy that his brothers were both safe and alive, with him. Sabo wasn't responding, and by the looks of him, he looked unconscious. Even Luffy could tell that much. I'm Dayton the Bandit, and for better or worse, I happen to be the guardian of these here brats. You cannot touch these brats. Dayton yelled at Blue Jam and stood in front of her brats. Run for it. I won't run, Ace declared, balling his fists. He placed Sabo carefully in the hands of Dagra. His pipe danced on his fingers, listening to his commands. Dragon raised an eyebrow at that. He couldn't let Ace fight here in the fire. But the trait was so similar to Roger. He couldn't help but stand beside Ace. He will watch the kid fight, and if anything goes wrong, he will gladly interfere and help him. "What do you think you're saying, Ace boy?" Dayton yelled. All she wanted was for Ace, Sabo, and Luffy to get the hell out of this place. She would never admit that she cared for them, but that be damned. All she wanted was for them to be safe above everything. "You can't face this guy. Blue Jam's strength isn't just for show. You know, he is beyond the level a kid like you has hope of taking down." "Shut up," Ace snapped. "They know." Ace didn't want to take a chance. These rascals were trying to connect, and he can't let them do that. Dayton paled at the word and glanced at Blue Jam's greedy eyes. She traced the line of sight, which ended in Luffy's shirt. The chain. Dragon cursed at himself for not foreseeing it. He just wanted to give his son something rare, and seems like it called trouble. Dayton glared at Dragon's reaction at that. Dayton cannot let Ace be in danger. She cannot afford it. "I'll finish it. I won't let you go easily, bastard," Ace growled at Blue Jam, his hands turning a shade of gray as he punched Blue Jam. Blue Jam staggered on his feet and the fire licked him completely. But the madness in Blue Jam was there. It seemed never ending. He came out of the fire, looking like a zombie. Dragon felt impressed at it. The kid was using Haki without knowing. "Dagra, Magra, take Luffy and Sabo and run," Dayton ordered. But Luffy tried his best to squirm out of their grip. Luffy yelled that he won't leave without Ace. He yelled that he trusted Ace to kick Blue Jam's ass. Ace felt a confidence bubble within him, giving him a newfound energy. Adrenaline rushed in his body as he prepared for his new attack. Dayton took a deep breath and looked at Ace, who nodded at her. Ace lifted his pipe high in the air and Dayton her axe. They ran forward with a war cry. The fire didn't touch them. It didn't harm them cause of Dragon, who did his best to keep the fire away from Ace and Dayton. He was carrying Sabo and Luffy in his arms and ready to pick up Ace at the end of the fight. They needed to get out of here. Ace and Dayton attacked Blue Jam, who already looked like losing, together. Blue Jam got a hit on his head from the pipe and the axe made him bleed in his gut. The fire engulfed Blue Jam, not allowing him to escape anymore. Ace turned back and smirked. Luffy squirmed free of Dragon's arms, who pouted, and ran to Ace to hug him. Ace hugged him back with a smile on his face. He carefully removed the hair strands which were falling on his eyes, tugging them beyond his ears. "You okay, Lou?" he asked, checking the wound, which was just a tiny speck now. Luffy nodded and snuggled closer to Ace's chest, saying he was scared. Ace ruffled his hair slightly, trying to comfort his brother and for the first time not scolding him for crying and acting like a crybaby. Dayton and the other bandits were quiet. They haven't ever seen this part of Ace. They were happy to see Ace showing affection. They really were, but they needed to get out of the blazing inferno. Dragon cleared his throat and without a warning picked up Ace and Luffy. Ace squeaked at it but didn't complain much. He was already injured and tired and hungry. Dragon cleared the path for the bandits and them to reach the hideout. On the other side, people were crying, feeling helpless. They found no way to escape the hellish fire, which was increasing every damn second. They were praying to every god in the universe, with only one thing in mind, which was survival. But what they saw next surprised them, made them happy, and gave them a glimmer of hope. A path was made. A path where there was no fire. They believed that some kind of explosion just opened up a clear path. People ran to the only safe place they could see, and at the end of it was a ship. The path leads straight to the coast. It was a miracle for them. The nobles didn't know that the fire they had lit had fueled another fire, whose fruit will be born after some years. The ship which pulled at the coast that night provided remnants of the great terminal an opportunity to fight the injustice which had befallen on them. It provided them with a way to fight for their freedom. "Those who wish to join us in a battle for freedom, board our ship." The voice gave the people hope. It gave their hearts a way to fight against those who snatched them away from their homes and their livelihoods. They cheered and merrily came aboard, joining the Revolutionary Army and fighting together for their cause. The next morning, Dragon was sitting near the injured boys, watching them sleep soundly. He was informed by Ivankov after yesterday's night that they would be near Shimotsky village, to stalk and would wait for him to return to Bal to go together. Dragon watched the kids' chests rising up and down. They looked too cute, limbs sprawled over each other. He felt tempted to click a picture, but his camera was not with him. He will get chances later on, but right now he needs to think. He could clearly make a guess that Sabo's parents want him back, to have a good impression on the celestial dragons. And from what he had heard from Ace last night, he could clearly connect the dots and see that Ace was also in danger of letting his identity slip. If he didn't arrive yesterday to check on the boys, worse could have happened. He can't let the boys stay here. This place is no more safe for them. His dad would surely give him a handful of scolding and lectures, but he was ready for it. He can't just leave these defenseless kids, not completely, all alone, to fend for themselves. He wants to take the kids away from here. Far away, in Baltigo. Within his eyes, and his trusted people. They could learn many things in Baltigo and he could see and help them bring storms into the world. No doubt they will be the major figures in the new era, which will dawn soon. Sabo had expressed his desire to become a revolutionary while Ace and Luffy wanted to be pirates. He was sure they would make their dreams come true. They would all fly with bright colors someday. He saw the blonde groan and woke up. He blinked his eyes at Dragon and then smiled. "Thank you for saving me and my brothers." Sabo gave a polite bow to him, "But I can't stay here. My parents will come again in search of me and if I don't return they will hurt Luffy and Ace and I don't want that." "Shut up, Bo," Ace said groggily and pulled Sabo down, making him collapse on the bed. Ace snuggled into him, his chin on his hair. It was the first time Ace was showing affection to Sabo, which made him shocked and unable to move at all and red till neck. "What were you even thinking? Giving yourself up?" Ace spoke and pushed Sabo, making him sit up in the makeshift blankets, and glared at him. "I am the big brother and you are not going anywhere." Ace bonked Sabo on his head. "Don't even think about giving up your freedom for us." "But Ace." Sabo bit his lips. "They will find out then and I don't want to risk you both. You both are my treasures and I don't want to lose you both." Sabo's eyes got glossy and he looked at the ground. He didn't want to return to the hellhole, to his fake family, to all those tortures. He wanted to stay with his brothers always, but he didn't want to risk them. "How about the three of you come with me?" Dragon asked with a smile gracing his lips. He had got the perfect opportunity to get his son and new sons back. That way Sabo won't have to bargain his freedom for his brothers. Ace would be able to know some facts and Luffy wouldn't have to get any more upset on his departure.
Ace and Sabo titled their heads in confusion. "Why will you want that?" Ace asked, his hands crossed over his chest. "Now, I can't leave my sons in danger, can I?" Dragon grinned at the duo, who looked shocked. "Brothers of my son are my sons too." Dragon saw Sabo look down, probably hiding his tears, which threatened to flow. They never had a proper family except for each other so this was expected. Ace glared at Dragon with no heat but thousands of questions revolved around his mind. He was a son of a demon. How can Dragon accept a son of a demon to live with him? "You can get stronger and Sabo can become a revolutionary," Dragon said, his hands on his chin and a smirk on his lips. "You can learn things about Marines, which will definitely help in your pirate careers." Dragon spoke, giving them plenty of reasons to consider his offer. "Learn to spy, which will again help you in the future and Haki." Dragon looked at Ace directly, "And you can learn more about the government's propaganda. I have things to show and give you." Ace and Sabo looked at each other, talking silently about the offer. It was tempting and they really liked it. The one time Dragon had come, he had spent all his time with them and Luffy. He never discriminated between them. He loved, cared and protected them. It felt good. But both Sabo and Ace would not say it aloud. "Are we finally going to live with Papa?" Luffy jumped up from his bed and bounced onto his dad's lap. He looked like he was over the clouds. Dragon chuckled and looked at Luffy fondly, ruffling his hair softly. "Yes, Lu," Dragon grinned, "if your brothers agree to it." Luffy grinned brighter than the sun and looked at his brothers with his brown puppy doe eyes, pleading with them to agree. He always wanted to live with his father and brothers together. It was like a dream come true. Ace and Sabo looked at each other, silently contemplating the words, then nodded their head and grinned at Luffy. They will do anything for their baby brother to smile. If they will get stronger and closer to their goal then why not? Moreover, this will make their younger brother happy and not to forget, they really liked Dragon. He played with them, told them stories, bought them clothes, and loved them like how he does Luffy. He even cared about them like no one else had done, except Makino. They packed the little things which they like from their treehouse and their treasure stack. Unfortunately, their treasure stack won't be growing now that they would be living in the Revolutionary Army's base. But Sabo changed the grim face of Ace by reminding him that they can go to missions and loot the Marines and the pirates blind. That got a glint of mischief from both the brothers and Ace and Luffy chuckled darkly. If Dragon was to know what he was calling in his base, then, let's guess, he would not approve it much but he wouldn't like it any other way. They said their goodbyes to Makino and Dayton, telling them they will return when they will get big and Ace and Luffy promised to start their journey to become pirates from Dawn Island, their home island. They landed on the ship, Wind Grandma, the ship of the Revolutionary. Dragon got raised eyebrows from his comrades but only Ivankov had a shit-eating grin on his face. "Lu?" Ivankov crouched in front of the jumpy little boy, who grinned at him and jumped over him, and got inside his hair. His laughter resounded throughout the whole ship, making people automatically smile at the adorable kid. His laughter is damn contagious. Ace and Sabo were a little bit wary in the unknown ship and Dragon saw through them. He ushered them and Ivankov with his son to the galley and the boys didn't even care about the world and started eating like feral kids. Dragon could only chuckle seeing them fight over food. He had told them many times, even in the forest, that no one will snatch their food and they will get plenty to eat but the boys refused and he soon found out it was their way of showing affection to each other and in a way training. So, he doesn't mind it. He glanced at the people who were eating food.
They had dropped their forks and knives and had horrified expressions on their faces. The people were horrified because of three main reasons. 1. The kids ate like they were raised by a pack of wolves or bandits, which they were. 2. They could see the stacks of plates, with sauces and juices dripping from them, lining up one by one. It petrified them. Where was the food even going? The chefs were terrorized and tired of serving them. Dragon pitied the chefs who were falling one by one. The food stocks would be going down drastically. 3. Many people in the galley ignored the kids in favor of seeing the smiles and chuckles that Dragon was giving. They were scared out of their minds, thinking if he really was Dragon the Revolutionary or not. Ivankov mentally laughed at the sight of Kuma, who was gaping like a fish. "Is that really you, Dragon?" Kuma finally asked, making the people turn towards Drade brothers, who ate without a care about the world. Some people were ducking and keeping their food out of the reach of the small, grabby, rubbery hands which was flying all over the table to snatch their food. Dragon chuckled and patted Luffy on his back. He could see his little sunshine was getting sleepy slowly. Dragon turned towards Kuma and couldn't help the small smile which came upon his face. He made a gesture telling him that they will talk later. When the brothers finished their eating, Luffy was fast asleep on the table while Ace and Sabo were looking around the galley for the first time. "Come on, boys, I'll show you your rooms for tonight," Dragon said in a low voice and made them follow him. The ship was full of the residents of Grade Terminal in it, so it only left one room for them. His room, which he wasn't at all hesitant in sharing with them. He opened the room and showed the boys the bed. He placed Luffy on the bed and the boys climbed up on it. He could see them cuddling with each other. He tucked the boys and placed the blanket on them and chuckled at the red faces the brothers made. He smiled and switched off the lights. He had to explain to Kuma what was going on. He felt sorry for keeping him in the dark. It was Ivankov's cabin, where they decided to talk. Kuma was seeing Dragon in a funny way. Dragon couldn't expect less. His reputation as a stoic, serious leader was crumbling to pieces already, and he really couldn't blame him. How could someone be serious when Luffy was smiling and giggling and when Ace and Sabo were making red faces? He couldn't. "They are my sons," Dragon said, and things started to click to Kuma. So, that was the reason he was chuckling and grinning. "The reason you disappear." Dragon nodded his head. "I don't like to stay away from my sunshine for a long time." Dragon gave a small smile and started explaining everything, except the part about Luffy's abilities. "Sabo wants to be a revolutionary and Ace and Luffy pirates," Dragon smirked, "and I want to support them. They are strong for their age and can beat up grown-up men. If they are trained properly, then they can bring lots of chaos for the world government." Kuma took the words with a grain of salt. He couldn't believe those feral kids were Dragon's son, especially the smallest one. He looked nothing like Dragon. He was the exact opposite of Dragon. Where Dragon was serious all the time, the kid was playful. Where Dragon was smart, the kid looked dumb. When Garp reached Dayton's hideout, he tried feeling his grandsons, which he couldn't find at all. He felt worry clinging to him with each passing second. He knocked on the door of the bandits violently, making Dayton and the bandits burst out of it. He could see Dayton paling at his sight. Dogra and Magra with the other bandits were already stepping back. He could see the fear creeping into them. It made Garp tense. He glared at Dayton with full intensity. "Where are my brats?" Garp hissed each word. He wouldn't accept that his grandkids went missing. He was thinking the worst. What would he do if the celestial dragons found them out? Where are they? Are they okay? Dayton felt a shiver run through her. She rummaged through her pockets and pulled out a piece of paper and presented it to Garp. "Dragon left this for you," she said, and backed up from Garp. She was sure she would be getting a punch, which she got, making her sprawl on the floor. Garp made his way to the forest, wanting to read the letter in solitude. "Father, I can't allow my sons to stay in a place where they can't be safe anymore." Garp felt himself taking a breath of relief. His grandsons were alive and well. "For your information, Sabo was captured by his parents but escaped. Ace's identity was guessed by a pirate, Blue Jam, who no longer exists, and I didn't want to risk my son's brother's life." Garp felt himself boiling in rage. It was definitely a close call for Ace and Sabo, and from the letter, he could feel that Dragon considered the two brats as his own. "Thanks for taking care of them." Garp laughed, but he couldn't help but feel that he wouldn't be able to see his grandsons so much. Maybe he can call sometime and check on them. But it still didn't feel okay, that they won't be Marines now. But he knew Luffy will be the happiest one. He had always expressed his desire to stay with his dad, and Ace and Sabo will get a proper family. Maybe it isn't too bad and he will see them all again.